Okay, welcome to the sixth hearing of the committee's inquiry into the impact of renewable energy zones on rural regional communities and industries in New South Wales. I acknowledge the Ngurri Ngurri and Wiradjuri people, the traditional custodians on the land on which we are meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. My name is Mark Benaziak. I am chair of the committee. I ask everyone in the room to please turn their mobile phones to silent. Parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses in relation to the evidence they give today. However, it does not apply to what witnesses say outside of the hearing, and I urge witnesses to be careful about making comments to the media or to others after completing their evidence. In addition, the Legislative Council has adopted rules to provide procedural fairness for inquiry participants, and I encourage committee members and witnesses to be mindful of these procedures. So I welcome our first lots of witnesses. And thank you for taking the time to give evidence.
Excuse me, Chairman, the crowd can't hear you. Could you speak up a little bit, please?
I will try to, thank you. So I welcome and thank each of our witnesses for making the time to give evidence. So starting from my left, can you please state your name, position, title and swear either an oath or affirmation, please?
Stephen Parasotto. I'm a senior town planner with Murrumbidgee Council. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare an affirmation that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Stephen. You might just maybe move your microphone a little bit closer to you. Thank you.
Alison McLean, Executive Manager, Economic Development and Tourism with Hayshire Council. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Jack Bond, CEO of Edward River Council. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Gary Stoll, Director of Planning and Infrastructure at Murrumbidgee Council, and I swear that evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
And just starting back with you, Mr. Parasotto, would you like to make a short opening statement before we go to questions?
No, thank you.
No?
I will, thank you. The South West REZ and Hayes' role in the energy transition represents the most significant economic, environmental and social transformation for this community since settlement. The region's topography, sparse population and large-scale primary production make it well suited to host energy development. Hay Council did not approach this transition with fear. We did not approach it blindly. We approached it with pragmatism and with the community at the heart of every decision. From the outset, we have held the mantra that this transition must happen with us, not to us. Council made a deliberate choice early to invest in community engagement and capacity building and to ensure our residents had the tools and information to participate meaningfully in the process. The work led to the development of the principles document, which now underpins how we engage with government and industry, and most importantly, how government and industry engage with our community. Recognising the impacts, pressure on housing, accommodation, water, waste management, roads, and concerns about boom and bust cycles, consultation fatigue, and ensuring that agriculture and renewables can coexist, we have strengthened our governance approach through the development of a community benefit framework and renewable energy position statements, ensuring there is a transparent and consistent structure for negotiations, planning agreements, benefit sharing and management. The position statements clearly articulate the expectations of the community and council around both the impacts and opportunities from the transition. They place council in a position to effectively negotiate and advocate for our community. Our community has also been clear. We are not chasing short-term growth. We are focused on long-term legacy outcomes. Importantly, Hay is not working alone. Across the South West REZ, all 7 councils have collaborated since 2022, strengthening our collective ability to negotiate for better outcomes. Now formalised into the Regional Renewable Energy Response Committee, this regional partnership is essential because the impacts and opportunities of renewable energy do not stop at local government boundaries. We all recognise that this transition is not linear and that continued preparation is key to a successful transition. For communities like Hay, the renewable energy transition is not an abstract policy conversation. It is real. It began the moment the first developer started a conversation with the landholder. As a community, council and region, we have made a choice to engage in the transition on our terms. This transition also gives this region, for the first time, agency over its future, with the ability to draw capital investment into the region and further diversify our economy. And it's about long-term jobs. While the construction phase is temporary, the operational phase is enduring. 35 highly skilled operational workers living in town, that matters, because in small communities, a handful of families can mean the difference between decline and sustainability. What the transition does require is a coordinated approach from federal, state and local government to ensure that our communities are protected and supported through this transition. We require a whole-of-government approach to ensure that the infrastructure needs of these communities are met, that the impacts are mitigated, and that the benefits flow into the communities directly impacted. We need support to ensure that the opportunities available are realised. We need all agencies, from Energy Code to Transport for New South Wales, to engage early and often and to acknowledge the critical role that local government plays as a lead agency in these communities.
Thank you. Mr Bond, do you have an opening statement?
That's a hard act to follow, I think, that one. So I'll try not to duplicate any of the things. And I think a big change that's happened in the last 12 months since the inquiry submissions was made is that Energy Co has actually really stepped up the mark, I believe. They have funded every council within the REZ boundary a dedicated $250,000 per council over a period of time to assist with managing the impact that it does have on council resources, which has been fantastic. That created a very big uplift for council to understand what is coming rather than trying to manage it within a very small resource within some of our smaller councils out in this area. So I believe that's made a big uplift, and I think that will really get us to understand what is happening and what's on the way. At the same time, it also we understand that it is going to be a much bigger impact than what we might have anticipated at that time. I think the impact on drinking water is going to be significant. Out in these rural areas, you probably drove past where some of the sites might be. We did some calculations on what the water could be, and it could be 3 million kilometres of carting water just to try and get to the sites. With the roads, the last mile roads out here to try and get off the state highways onto the actual sites is very significant as well. I think that's something that certainly needs to be looked at. And I think waste is another significant one as well. To try and put the amount of waste they're going to generate into our smaller community facilities is just will not work for anyone, and we really need to work together. Energy Co are now preparing whole of government reports that are managing those infrastructure impacts, which I think is a very good outcome there. Out of those reports, there's going to be some very big recommendations to be made where council, state government and the proponents need to work together to make sure that we get legacy projects and not left with liabilities that are going to impact our small communities going forward.
Thank you. Mr Stoll?
Thank you, Mr Chair. On behalf of Murrumbidgee Council, I'd just like to put things into perspective first very quickly. We host the site of the Dinawan substation, the VNI West from Wagga to Dinawan, and then the VNI West line from Dinawan across into Victoria. We have 3 major wind farms, the Yanco Delta wind farm, which we share with Edward River, the Dinawan solar farm, which we share again with Edward River, and the Bullawar the wind farm we share with Hay and Edward River, as well as the Dinawan solar farm. All these developments in approximately close proximity to each other. Now we've also got the distinction of having the PEC line, which is a major transmission line across South Australia as well. The PEC line and the Dinawan substation commenced construction approximately 3 years ago, so we've suffered the consequences of this scheme the last 3 years with the destruction of our local roads, the splitting of our community. So we've tried to deal with that with the conditions of consent that the Department of Planning placed upon those 2 developments, which we feel are completely inadequate. Since then, we've formed our own policies on the last mile routes, which we've shared with the Edward River and Hay, to try and negotiate satisfactory outcomes for our communities who are using roads we've built and maintained for the last 90 years on average of 20 vehicles a day, now seeing over 300. So we've been at the coal front of this since it's a coal face since the inception of this scheme. In relation to planning in New South Wales, we feel that they've been lacking. We have not seen them on the ground out here at all in their assessment process or any of these developments. Traffic for New South Wales, again, are dealing with their roads only, but not the last mile routes. That simply comes back to council to negotiate outcomes, which is a full-time job virtually and a huge impost on our resources. Also, the rents in the local towns have grown exponentially, which has cut out a lot of housing for our community, and the current rents for a bedroom in Coleambally is $350 per week. That's just for a bedroom. We didn't want these things. When we don't want these, we'd be very happy if they were not here. But as they're coming, we can't stop them. And as Ali and Jack have both said, we're going to try and leverage the benefits of these to make our community sustainable into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So the committee's just resolved to have free flow questions. The questions will come from anywhere, including we have one member online at the moment. We may have some more coming in. So just looking to someone open up the batting order.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you all for being here and for your opening statements. I just wanted to ask about the interaction with Energy Co, because that was something that did come up in your submissions, and I note Mr Bond, you said that it's improved a bit since you wrote these, so probably to any or all of you, what do you think was the trigger for that change? How has it improved, and is there anything else that you would like to see from that interaction from Council and Energy Co?
When we first started the conversations, we actually had to lobby for Energy Co to come down here, and so we had been working as a group of councils since 2022. The first time that Energy Co actually visited this region was at the end of 2023. So we did feel like we were forgotten REZ. There was a lot of energy by Energy Co put into central West Arana, into New England as well. But we have, I think, as a group of councils, lobbied for them to come here. We have ensured that the agencies that are involved in the decisions, such as Transport for New South Wales, Waste, Water and Planning, are part of those conversations as well. So I attribute it to the fact that we have really worked together to ensure that what they're responding to is a regional response, not individual councils. But we've also worked really hard to develop that relationship with Energy Co.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to add anything, Mr Bond?
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with Ali's comments there. I think with Energy Co only becoming back into fruition, I think they weren't really a department. It was something set up in the 1980s, reformed back in 2020 when this was starting to build up again. So they've been rebuilding their staff, and I think, yeah, certainly that focus was on some of those REZs that were further ahead. We are probably the last REZ in timeline to go ahead, but I think they're starting to put those resources down here, which is a much better outcome.
Mm-hmm. And from, I guess, Murrumbidgee?
Yep, we've got a slightly different take on Energy Co. We spent a lot of resources, time and in staff in compliance issues, assessment of applications for 2 years before their Energy Co payment scheme came in to help councils pay for those resources. So we're 2 years behind Hay and Edward River. Energy Co have always told us from the start that they are the final approval of the developments, and they've got a fair bit of power in negotiating and massaging the end result of the developments. Now that hasn't quite proven to be the case. We have an issue where Yanko Delta need to run a transmission line down 2 of our local roads. Significant loss of biodiversity on the road side, and in one section of the road, 4 towers are that close to the road, they have to be protected by barricades. We're opposing that location of that transmission line. We wanted it shifted into the adjoining landowners' properties with the landowners' agreement. Unfortunately, they have got contractual arrangements with another energy development. Energy Co said that they would be able to negotiate to have those transmission lines located onto the private property to alleviate our issues. Fortunately, they were unable to do that, despite saying that they believed they could.
Okay. And then I think you mentioned, Mr Bond, there was $250,000 or something each council got. What was the process of that, and then how do you as a council determine what you use that funding for?
The process was pretty long. We'd heard that it had started to happen at other REZs first, and we're hoping with that precedent set that we could leverage that, and that's probably where we forced a discussion and pushed back a lot around how much resources and time was already taken on our staff. Our staff are wonderful, but I think trying to assess such developments like these, and I think the road impact is something that we've never seen before, especially when you've got Transport for New South Wales assessing movements of the wind turbine blades, which is very significant. We haven't got the skill set to understand what that means when it gets onto our roads. I would love to see state government look after that. We do get a pretty free leash on how we get to spend that money that comes into council. Us as a council, we have all the developments that have been approved through the AMIO process within our council boundaries. So we put on a dedicated resource just to manage that, and they're the ones who work with every developer going forward, keep all our councillors up to date. That's been a big uplift, but then some of the other councils that might not have any proponents currently approved in their area, I think they're looking to spend their money on some studies and understand what it might look like. We call ourselves the G7, the 7 councils are within the region, and we're looking to even pull those resources together as well so that we're not duplicating the work between ourselves too.
Okay, thank you. I'll let someone else have a go. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Just to you, Mr. Stoll, you spoke about inadequate conditions of consent from planning. Are you able to sort of flesh that out a bit and tell us where you think they're inadequate or what needs to be improved in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. The main one that we're arguing with them over is their default position for the last mile routes over council roads, which is basically based on a pre and post dilapidation report. When the construction period is 3 years, we found that we would constantly have a crew on our local roads, sometimes weekly, sometimes fortnightly, but at least once a month. Now those roadworks are unprogrammed, unfunded by council, so we got to the point where over the 3-year period we were then trying to charge the contractors to pay for those road upgrade works. So the pre and post condition relies upon a condition of the road assessed before work starts and at the end of the construction period, which is totally inadequate, to the point now that we've adopted our own policy whereby we'll be requiring all future renewable energy developments to sign a voluntary planning agreement for council to construct the roads applicable to the traffic volumes that they'll be putting down those roads, and they'll be paying for that work, and then council will be maintaining it with our crews for the life of the development.
Ms McLean, in your opening statement, you mentioned quite a few things around what your council's put into place. I think you mentioned sort of like principles.
Yep.
Is that sort of, I guess, like a rules of engagement? Is that sort of public or is that available? Okay, so that would be available for the committee.
Absolutely.
To have a
And
look
then we've continued that work where we've now developed a community benefit framework and also the position statements. And the position statements cover everything from what our expectations are around roads, what we expect around waste and water management. Edward River have also done a similar set of documents, and it just firms up our ability to negotiate. And we found now going into negotiations with planning agreements, we ask the developers to refer to those position statements and respond to those, and it certainly gives us a different level of negotiating power.
And how have they responded to those?
They've responded really well to them, actually. In the negotiations we've had so far, one of the things that our community said in that principles document, the principles document reflects what the community saw as impacts and opportunities. One of the key things that our community wanted to see was affordable energy. If we could see the towers spinning, we wanted to feel it in our hip pocket. And Sameva AGL are actually going to deliver a affordable energy plan to every resident and small business in 2711 and 2710 postcodes. And that's something that was really important to our community and something the developers have been able to deliver for us. But that is based on the fact that we had the principles document and those frameworks for them to respond to.
Okay. And this is probably a question to all the councils. We heard up in New England that water availability and the use of water for these projects is going to have a significant impact on their communities. I'm just wondering whether you've done similar assessments or seen similar assessments on on some of the projects that may be coming and what their water, how much of your water are they going to use up, and how you plan to manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think they have just completed a whole of government water study as well as the sewer study. Sewer, I don't think will be as big of an impact. They'll create their own ponds, evaporate off and manage the solid waste from there. But the drinking water is significant because where the 4 main locations are, they are 50 kilometres away from every town. So, a 50 kilometre round trip, 100 kilometre round trip is significant when you start to cut the amount of water, and that's where that 3 million kilometres will actually start to come in, which is significant. I think at some point in time, whether it's council-driven, state-driven, or the proponents all coming together, it would actually be a lot cheaper if they built a dedicated water treatment plant 5 kilometres from all these sites, not coming into council areas. It takes away all that truck damage on the state roads coming in and out of those sites. And then that could possibly be left for a legacy development, to be left for the farmers in that area to get access to drinking water during droughts. It might also be a bigger liability as well. But I think these days you can get packaged plants, and I think if they'll really look to invest in something like that, it would make a significant difference to the projects.
Any other comments? Or
Just to add to what Jack and Ali have just said, Murrumbidgee Council will be hosting 2 major accommodation camps. We also already have the Dinawan accommodation camp. So the Yanko Delta accommodation camp will have up to, at its peak level, nearly 900 workers on site. So obviously they're fairly desperate for potable water. They've approached us to supply that water. We can't from the Jerilderie water treatment plant, which is the closest one, because it's struggling to cope with Jerilderie at the moment, township. So we're looking to transport that water, source that water out of Collyambley through an existing bore that we have. So we're investigating that at the moment. But our commitment first is to our community rather than development. So if there is adequate capacity in that system, we're likely to sell water to them.
I guess that was part of my question. Do you have capacity in your systems to offer this water? Because what we heard from Armidale Council was that one of the projects was going to basically take up all their water supply for the year,
Yep.
or a significant percentage of it for the year. So I guess, do your systems have the capacity to take on this?
Hay does. We have the capacity to supply. We see it as an opportunity, as an income stream for councils. We're a really small council in terms of our rate base, so we need to look at how do we create financial stability and sustainability. So we do see that as an opportunity, but as Jack said, we'd like to see some legacy infrastructure projects come out of this. So if they are using our water, then we'd like to see improvements to our water treatment plants, to furthering supply out to our outlying areas, and alternatives like Jack was talking about. So it's not just that sugar hit of construction, but we leave a legacy for the community.
Yeah. And these are the things you're including in your negotiations or your principal document with the developers?
Yes.
Yep.
Or we're trying to.
You're trying to. Looking to others.
I just,
McDonald?
sorry, with regard to, say, roads that you have to do, are, to your knowledge, the road upgrade costs that you'll need to, are they being covered by the proponents, or are you having to use ratepayer funds for these REZ projects? And that's to all councils.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, so all the upgrades will certainly be done by the proponents, absolutely, but I think it's still that interim of that maintenance once the upgrade is done, and then the long-term upgrade as well, because at this point in time we've only got what could be a single narrow unsealed road. To try and get these wind turbine blades down, they're going to be a lot more wider. The depreciation on such an asset, going back to council, and the extra maintenance that they'll leave behind.
Yep.
And that's where I think Murrumbidgee has taken a good lead in trying to get some conditions in that the proponents are to pay for the cost of those upgraded maintenance going forward.
And we've had the difficulty, I think all councils share this issue, is getting across to the developers that our local roads have been developed to suit our local communities. Remote, spread out large stations, averaging 20 vehicle movements a day. One development over the life of their project with construction of 208 wind towers, we'll have over 2,500 oversized, overmass vehicles down these roads, which are built to cater for 30 vehicles a day.
Yeah.
And that is an issue that's taking up a considerable amount of time with our staff to try and get this message across, that the developers have to construct these roads to make them suitable for that level of traffic.
And then for the ongoing maintenance after the...
Yes, well, they'll have operational management staff on site for the next 30 years, and now obviously that level of traffic, traffic will probably be a lot less, but still there will be impacts higher than what is now, currently now.
Well, but that then brings me to a question with regard to you saying your council staff having to spend hours or so, and you mentioned that you have been given funding per council which you can use any way you like. Are you finding that you're having to use that for additional staffing or how, you know?
Yeah, I think we put on the one dedicated resource as a whole new resource. As well, we've sort of put some of our planners' time towards it and some of our engineering teams' time towards it as well. Yep, certainly a new dedicated resource.
And the impacts we felt had on our roads happened prior to that funding resource was made available, so we had 2 years of that.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't put extra staff on, but one of the outcomes too is that we've had a number of our own projects to undertake in the last 2 years and various state government funding opportunities. They've all had to be put back, and we're now quite behind on those, and we're seeking extensions. So it may be that we may not get those extensions. So that's another unintended outcome of this situation as well.
I think Mr.
If I may, yeah, thank you. One of the other issues with the roads is obviously the developer understands that they have to construct the road to meet their standards. So it might go from a level 1 road catering for just farm vehicles to being a level 3 to cater for the heavy vehicles. Now, yes, there's maintenance issues during the construction period. Who is going to do that? Council will do it if we've got the resources and can be paid for it. But at the end of the project, when it just comes down to maintenance, council doesn't want to see a higher level road, which means council is then having to keep it maintained to that standard. So one of the things that we will require is that they bring the road back to the previous standard once the construction phase is done.
I was just going to add in some numbers there for you. So I think one of the things that is of impact for us is the cumulative impact. So for the 3 councils here, we're hosting the 4 developments that have had access rights given to them. For 3 of those projects, we're talking about 5,473 OSOM movements over that construction period. Nearly all of those will be coming through the Hay roundabout. So that's a significant impact just on that state road and then onto our local roads. But there's also an impact that we're asking the developers and the state government to consider, and that's our existing industry. We don't want to see our existing industry come to a halt, which is our livelihood, because of these movements. And that's where we need Transport for New South Wales to really come on board and take a look at not these projects in isolation, but what they look like from a holistic point of view with our industry.
So that interests me. So when have you been given, say, like a whole of region cumulative impact assessment on, say, or is it on a project by project? And sometimes that is harder to, say what the impact on your roads will be. But if you had that whole of region assessment, it might make it easier to say, oh, this road needs this. But if it's only on a project by project one, what are you seeing?
We actually developed, before Energy Co were really part of this conversation, we actually developed that resource ourselves. This is the prop. This is the spreadsheet that we have for all of the developments, not just those who've been granted access that we're currently dealing with across this region. Yep. There's 33 projects that the 7 councils are dealing with, and we have put all of that information together. Energy Co have delivered a number of studies that we've requested. There's a cumulative impact study, a waste study, a water study, a skills gap analysis, but we don't have a transport study that looks at all of that.
Yeah, the transport one's quite difficult because of our location. We are almost equal distance from Port of Newcastle, Port of Adelaide, Port of Geelong. So I don't think they've actually determined which port they're coming from. We're here in the Newcastle port's probably going to say no because there's so much swim blades already going there because of the other REZ projects that are going up. To come out of Victoria is very dense in terms of the road access and some of the constraints that's going to be on that alignment. So we're probably hedging our bets. It's most likely going to be Adelaide across the Sturt Highway and then coming down the Sturt Highway onto those last mile roads.
I addressed the Independent Planning Commission on Friday about this very matter. We have a development that's recently being in the process of being approved, which is the Dinawan Solar Farm, which will be using the Newell Highway and then turning onto the Kidman Way, both state-owned roads, and an intersection that Council's been lobbying for more than 20 years to be upgraded. It's poorly designed and poorly built. Now, the Dinawan Solar will only have 17 oversized overmass vehicles using it, and the Department of Planning, with an obvious lack of consultation with Traffic for New South Wales, have said that they just has to be slightly widened by 2 metres either side. This is the same intersection that Yanco Delta will be using to put 2,500 oversized overmass vehicles coming up from Geelong over their 3-year construction period. Now, the Department of Planning has accumulated impact guideline that they put out for renewable energy. Obviously, they didn't listen or read their own document. Now, our argument was that they should have consulted with Traffic New South Wales, whether they do it on the Dinawan Solar or the Yanco Delta Wind Farm, but it has to be, that intersection has to be upgraded. Now, we're trying to do it at a local council level, but there needs to be at a state level with these departments some sort of consultation to achieve the outcomes we've been asking for.
Just on roads, another unique situation that we have out here, you've seen the flatness and the remoteness that's there, is that we have two of the largest irrigation companies in Australia. And a lot of those irrigation pipes that go under the road are not owned by the council or the state government. They're owned by the shareholders of those farmers that own that water. So a lot of those bridges and culverts have not been assessed to understand what these loads are going to take over those assets as well.
So it sounds like councils are doing a lot of the administrative work on behalf of, say, the government to get these REZ zone up and running.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the administrative cost to each?
Well, one recent example I can state is we received a traffic plan for one of the developers, which indicated a number of our local roads, bridges and culverts that they would be using. So we used $70,000 of the money that Energy Co gave us to assess these bridges and culverts, because the traffic management plan that was associated with it said that there'd be very little impact on these bridges and culverts and roads. It came back that our independent assessment that we had undertaken indicated there would be significant impact on these roads and bridges and culverts. The developer then changed their transport route and they're not going to use that road anymore. So we just spent $70,000 having stuff assessed which we probably didn't need to have assessed.
Yeah.
Can I just say there's another challenge for this region in terms of the development, in that all material will have to come in from outside of the area. All water, as Jack mentioned, will have to come in and out of the council areas. So there's an additional load of heavy vehicle movements that the other REZs won't have.
Yes.
And that's something that we would like to see from the developers and from Energy Co or Transport for New South Wales in terms of a coordinated approach. Because what we have found is that while the Tier 1 contractors will say this is the road that must be used, by the time you're down to the subcontractors, they're going to take the shortest route that's available. That may not be a road that's been identified. We want it to look, we would like to have as much information as possible around what those heavy vehicle movements look like, because while the OSOM numbers are huge, it's actually that constant heavy vehicle movement on roads that are designed for 20 or 30 local vehicles that are now going to be taking upwards of 300 vehicle movements a day that really has the impact.
Our council just coming out of the Project Energy Connect, so from Dinnerwan Substation to South Australia upgrade. Part of that, they were the concrete truck movements on one of our local roads, which was a sealed road, was extremely damaged, during the construction period. We tried to work with the contractor, Elecnor, to step in and make those upgrades very quickly. Because of our remoteness, they were saying it was very challenging to try and get contractors to even come out and do the works. So council actually stepped in and did the works. Now it was $600,000 that we've, had to lay out on the hope that we do get the money back. We do believe we will get the money back, but even that took away the resources from the typical maintenance. We haven't got those spare crews just to do it, but we felt we needed to do it to make sure our community wasn't impacted.
Mr. Donnelly, do you have any questions?
Yeah, listen, thank you all for coming, and thank you for your submissions and also the frankness in which you're presenting the evidence today. Can I just ask, in terms of the 7 councils working together, sharing information, etc., is that done through a formal structure of monthly meetings or regular specific meetings where there's an agenda which is worked through in that sort of rigorous way? Or is it more of a, I won't use the word ad hoc, but on an as-needs getting together when you think there's enough issues on the agenda, so to speak, that really require us to meet and discuss? Just that structure of meeting and collaboration would be interesting to know how that works.
Yeah, so it started as the G3. G3. We're enormously amused by our names. And then we formed up the G7.
Yep.
We've now formalised that into the Regional Renewable Energy Response Committee.
Yep.
And through Energy Co, we've been funded to appoint a regional energy manager for that very purpose, to add structure and rigour in that information sharing.
Yep.
So we appointed the regional energy manager in January, and we will now start to have regular meetings where we discuss that. We also have a 6-weekly meeting with Energy Co where the G7 all attend as well. So we do have regular meetings. We share all of our information because we realise we can't do this alone.
No.
This is something that we're used to doing across all of our councils. We share information, we share resources, but this is a significant impact for us, and so we realise that we need to resource that effectively, but we also need to be able to share that information. I mean, the conversations that we're having about roads, we all have regularly with each other. We have now formalised that, yeah.
The other question I'll ask is this, that inside each council itself, so looking at each council itself, and appreciate the fact that some are larger and perhaps a better resource for a whole range of reasons. There might be, it's been a more wealthy council, perhaps vis-a-vis one that's perhaps not been so prosperous over time, that embedding inside the council the work that's to be done associated with this, is it essentially driven by the general manager of the council taking the leading edge on all of this, or are there effectively subcommittees or a standing committee that operates which deals with what are obviously a range of issues that are on the boil at any point in time? Just how that's managed by each council, perhaps?
I think it probably goes to resourcing and size.
Yep.
We work closely with other councils in the other REZs as well. By way of example, Dubbo Council has 600 staff, and they did a study as to how many hands or how many roles an EIS, this is an EIS, would go through, and that's 60 roles that it would go through. For Hayshire Council, we have just under 60 staff, including outside staff, and that goes through 2 people. That's myself and the general manager. The impact of a development is the same. It doesn't matter what the size of your council is. And so for us to form up a subcommittee in council, we simply don't have enough people to do that. So it's about using the resources we have to respond, but that impact is significant on the resourcing that we're able to put.
And that would be typically the general manager, perhaps with the lead role, than the person responsible for nodding, saying no, perhaps. Explain that, but also the person involved in planning at the council, and what other specific areas inside the council would typically have a key role inside this sort of work. Obviously roads.
Yeah, I'll let Jack and Gary talk to theirs, but for us, it is the roles that it's fallen into, and this is probably one of the challenges that we had when the REZ was announced. We started to hear conversations from our landholders. It was, whose role is this? Like, what does this actually involve? So for our council, it's the general manager, economic development, economic development, and energy, and then planning as well. Roads obviously comes into it, but in a smaller council, the general manager really has oversight and input into everything.
Yeah,
We're a little bit of a bigger council, 150 staff. But I'd probably say a bit like Dubbo, that 10% of staff. So generally we have a monthly meeting internally. 15 staff probably come to it, everyone from myself down to like our manager of transport, just so that they're aware of what upgrades might be done by the proponents going forward. If they do see maintenance increase, they can because of these developments, they can also feed that information back up so that we can fight the case on council's behalf. That's probably where we see it.
Oh, that's very helpful.
And Murrumbidgee Council with a staff of about 90. I'm largely the responsible for renewable energy, director, and I just pull in staff as and when required. Our road maintenance teams, our planning staff of one, which is the other end of the table, on occasion, but it's mostly just myself.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Mr. Primrose?
Yeah, hi, just one from me, and thank you very much. It's all really, really valuable information. In terms of the renewable energy manager, I was wondering if you could just elucidate on the actual remit of that position, how you see what tasks will they actually be undertaking, and who will they report to?
So the regional energy manager reports to the chair of the REC, the Regional Renewable Energy Response Committee, and I'm chair at that currently. And that role is really about providing a strategic response across there's 7 areas, everything from roads, waste, water, accommodation, workforce uplift. We will get together as councils and as a committee and start to deliver those responses that will reflect what Edward River and ourselves have done in terms of our position statements. That role will also then support councils around resourcing, how to use those resourcing. It becomes an information sharing tool role as well. We will be delivering sort of pro forma responses. So if you're looking at an EIS, what are the things that you need to look at in an EIS? When do you need to respond? Key dates. I mean, the meetings that we have had to take on as a result of this is really quite extraordinary. What does that response look like for Transport for New South Wales? When are those key meetings? And it's about taking all the work that the councils are doing, sharing that information, but then being able to share that back to the various departments. And so it is that united response that means there is consistency in messaging, consistency in approach, allowing for all of the unique approaches that we need to take from our local roads and for our communities, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Probably just one final one from me to probably wrap us up. Mr. Bond, you mentioned all that water infrastructure that's not owned by council, and no one's really been, contacting the 2 irrigation companies. Has New South Wales government been made aware of that? Has Energy Co been made aware that there's a third party that they need to engage when they're planning this process?
We have raised it at a couple of meetings. I'm unsure if it's then been followed up and spoken to the irrigation companies about what these might look like as well. So I'm not sure exactly. I don't have the exact answer now, but I can follow that one after this to find out where it's up to. Yeah,
that would be good.
Just for the Chair's information, the 3 developments in Murrumbidgee Council are all outside of the irrigation area.
Yep.
There's no surface water available for them. They'll either be seeking bores for raw water if the chemical content allows them to mix with concrete. With Dinawan, for example, the bore was unsuitable, so they were using potable water for their concrete batching plant. To source water from irrigation supply, from Collie irrigation or Murray irrigation, we would have to have an extraction licence.
Yep, thank you for that.
Could I just slip in one quick one?
Yeah, sure.
I thought Mr. Parasito's point was very interesting and important to think about. The issue of the roads being needed to be upgraded the purpose of the works to be done and the transport across them. But over time, of course, you've got the issue of not needing the roads, and you described the discussions, I think, or at least thought about how that was going to be brought back to a level that could be managed sustainably over time. Could you please just elucidate on that, in fact, and how far that's got as an idea to be dealt with? Because given we're dealing with into the future as far as the eye can see,
Certainly, it's got to the point where we've developed a policy. So
Right.
when the developers come to us, we say, well, here's council's policy outlining what we require and how they are to go about it. So we've given them a copy. I'm assuming that they've accepted that's council's position. The other thing to note, like I said, So I deal with development assessment, so I look at a variety of development applications. And recently, where we've dealt with a lot of applications in rural zones for non-typical rural uses, say a feedlot where there's heavy vehicle movement and quarries on these local roads, we've put it to the developer, conditions of consent saying, well, look, these roads are only maintained once or twice a year by council as part of our program. So we go out there, fix it up. What we're saying to them that, well, because of your extra traffic generation, if there's damage as a result of your development, we're going to put a condition of consent saying, well, look, we'll go out and monitor it. If it's outside our maintenance program, you pay for the extra maintenance.
Yeah.
And also other conditions about not using it in wet. Now, the condition is fair, it's reasonable, and it would pass the Newbury principles for planning and what have you. So those sorts of conditions, where you're doing much smaller scale, are being accepted readily. And I think from our point of view, it's the frustration comes from going over the same issue with different developers and a lack of sport. I'll try and use an analogy from rugby union. It's like an under 8-year-old trying to lift Will Skelton in a line out. It is, we're at the bottom, we're trying to do it because where we come from is an area where we want to see our communities thrive. We don't want to see towns die. So we're doing things, and we seem to be getting information piecemeal from the developers. For example, well, it's post-construction development. They're going to have between 20 and 30 families coming to our area. Awesome. We need to open up some residential land for that, so we're doing that. There are other blockages along the way, but we are working through it. So, but look, going back to your question about the roads, look,
thank you.
We've got the policy, yes, thank you.
That's very helpful.
Can I just add something very quickly to what Stephen was saying, is the fact that we're not the consent authority. Councils are not the consent authority, the state government is. We've tried to get that policy up with the first one that we've had on our desk, which is the Dinawan Solar. Department of Planning did not include it. So that policy, even though it's community driven, council adopted, it's pointless if the Department of Planning is not going to back us and making sure it goes into conditioners' consent.
So, and that's Mr. Pasotta's example of the road maintenance over time. Beyond the project.
Okay. We put that in our submission to the Dinawan Solar Farm, and it came back with draft conditions of consent, pre and post elaboration report, their standard default condition.
Right.
So they ignored our request to put that policy up.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Could I just ask one more?
No.
Okay.
Should we put on notice?
I can put it on notice.
sorry.
It's just about the sentiment of the ratepayers towards the REZ, but it's on notice.
Yeah. Sorry, Ms McDonald, we did run a little bit over time. Okay, well, thank you very much for your appearance, your submissions, and probably more importantly, the mammoth amount of work you guys are doing for your community. It probably goes unnoticed. So thank you for that. We will put some supplementary questions to you on notice, and the Secretary will be in touch in getting them back to us. So, but thank you very much for your time this morning.
And thank you for listening to us. It means a lot to councils.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
For
committee.
your evidence. Thank you very much.
Welcome our next witnesses. So starting with you, Mr Stone Street, want to state your name, position, title and swear either an oath or affirmation, and then we'll go to the witnesses on WebEx.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My name is Brett Stone Street. My position is Interim Executive Officer with the Riverina and Murray Joint Organisation, or RAMJO. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. And starting with you, Mr Dodds, can you state your name and position, title and swear either an oath or affirmation? I believe the oath and affirmation have been emailed to you.
Just bear with us, we'll just open the affirmation up. I'm Terry Dodds, I'm the CEO of Balranald Shire Council, and we're just opening up the email now. Bear with me. Here we go, it was only sent this morning, was it?
Yep. I do have it here in front of me, so I could read it out and you could repeat it.
Yeah, can you put up the screen, please?
I'll just...
Here we go. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. And Ms Bewliff, is it?
Boliv, yes. My name's Hody Boliv. I'm the Executive Manager of Community and Governance with Balranald Shire Council. And I also solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Sure. Does any of you want to make a short opening statement before we go to questions?
Yes, Mr Chair.
Yes, thanks, Chair. The REZ and the ongoing influence and legacy that will be left by it is both a great thing and perhaps a risk to councils, depending on what's in their area. And during deliberations this morning, we want to talk about both. So perhaps, and Hody, we talk about missed opportunities in this end of the REZ, and I'll be talking about some of the things that others, that we've just heard others talk about in relation to matching capacity against scale and speed. Thanks, Mr Chair.
Thank you. Mr Stone Street, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. Probably just from the regional perspective, RAMJO certainly does support the transition to renewable energy and the part that regional New South Wales, of course, does need to play in that process. But what RAMJO would like to, I suppose, emphasise is that it is regional New South Wales that is essentially providing the key to the door to have renewable energy introduced into this state and this nation. Without regional New South Wales, the primary consumers of energy, which are the large users and also metropolitan areas, would not have the opportunity to realise those goals. And because of that, our communities, regional communities, would like this transition to occur with us and not to us. And in particular, what I would like to raise through this discussion is the question of infrastructure and how local government sits in the pecking order in terms of, I suppose, dictating the future of that infrastructure. And it was raised by a couple of the speakers in the last session that I would like to speak further with. And also there's the question of community compensation and community benefit schemes. Thank you.
Thank you. So committee has resolved to just have free flow questions. So I might throw to you, Ms McDonald, to kick us off.
Thank you. I just wondered whether you have, as an organisation, done an impact assessment across the footprint of the REZ.
We have completed 2 iterations now of an energy strategy. The first one in 2022 and the second one in 2025 that was adopted. To answer your questions in terms of specific data, we haven't undertaken that, but certainly the issues are called up in that strategy and some ways of dealing with the issues. But in terms of measurable data, we haven't got that in the strategy.
And you mentioned before that you want, I guess, to be with the project or working with it, not to you.
Yes.
So I wondered, in working with all the councils, what is the overall sentiment of, say, people living in the REZ zone towards the REZ?
I think the overall sentiment is that this is a once-in-a-generational opportunity to embrace the investment and the transition to renewable energy. Local government and councils that I'm here representing, those councils, and more specifically the councillors, are elected by the same constituents that elect the members of this committee.
Yeah, okay.
And I know that's stating the obvious, but when it comes to specific developments, all of which are state significant developments, of course, then it is the New South Wales government that determine the conditions of consent. And it is almost invariably the case that when local government-owned infrastructure, obviously there is state-owned infrastructure as well, but where there's local government infrastructure involved, the conditions of consent talk about consulting the local council, not complying with local council policies. I think one of the speakers in the last session made reference to that, where elected councillors adopt policies in terms of asset maintenance and whole-of-life costs. When it comes to the pointy end of a state significant development determination, that's where with any development, I've had 45 years experience in local government, the regulatory authority has a stick at the front end. Once the approval's issued, the stick's gone, or largely gone. So the word consult with local government is a very open-ended term, and therefore local communities don't feel they've got an equal part in the process.
So how would you change that? Like, instead of the word consult, you wouldn't change it with comply, but how would you see the local government and people from the area having more of a say in what happens here?
I would beg to differ. If I take roads infrastructure specifically, state roads are obviously state, so that's not a matter for local government to determine. Local roads are owned by local government and are fully funded by local government. For me, the elected councillors, elected by the community, by constituents, they need to exhibit their draft policies. They need to have acceptance from their communities as to what those policies are. And when it comes to that specific component of infrastructure, be it roads, local roads, that when determining an application at the Department of Planning level, they should be putting a condition that says consult and comply with publicly adopted policies of that local government area.
Okay. And so then you're saying with the planning, you think it's coordinated or largely, from a project to project as they come forward? Bearing in mind, that there's got to be that consultation, plus taking into consideration each local government area. Are they working with the whole government area, or sort of, this one's over here, so we'll only consult over here, we don't have to worry about over there, but even though it's a wider project?
From a planning perspective in New South Wales, the decision-making process is centralised. That's centralised in Sydney.
Okay.
There are delegations of authority that are passed down through regional, regional planning areas. Currently there are 8 or 9 regional planning areas in New South Wales. There is a discussion paper being published as we speak in the last fortnight from the Department of Planning that looks to consolidate all regional planning areas into one single area. And I suppose I would highlight that to the committee as a touchstone of the lack of visibility of the needs at community of interest level, which for me is LGAs, and a more broader sense would be the Ramsay region. But there is a lack of visibility and appreciation of what the local communities expect.
Ms Mitchell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've just got one for you, Mr Stone Street. Can you just explain, obviously you would have heard the earlier witnesses talk about the group of 7 and how they're working together. How does the joint organisation work with that group? Because obviously those 7 councils are also in your JO. So, yeah, how does that interplay sort of work in practice?
I think there isn't a great deal of integration between the two. Mr Dodds, who was online today, is the chair of our Energy Committee, newly appointed to that. But of course, you did hear the previous speakers talk about the question of resourcing in councils. They certainly do a great job, and they consult with each other. Coordinating that back up through to the JO level, if that was done in a formalised sense, I feel it might get bogged down in coordinating what efforts that they want to make. And they do a great job. To answer your question, we do have an energy subcommittee. Mr Dodds is the chair. He could allude to, maybe provide further comment on that question, but not a lot of integration between the two.
It's a nice segue, because Mr Dodds, I was going to ask you about that role and I guess how that's working from your perspective. And then I think you said earlier too something, perhaps Ms Boliv might talk about missed opportunities that you see with your experience with your council. So could you maybe sort of take us through those 2 areas?
Yeah, look, by and large, Ramsay works on relationships and personalities in between the meetings, because the meetings are only 4 times a year or maybe a little bit more. So all the CEOs know each other, all the mayors know each other. And, for example, I've been in contact with Brett quite a few times in the last few weeks, and Tamara, another person working for Ramsay in the energy space. And as we work through things, sometimes the amount of email traffic and phone calls gets quite intense, and then you'll have an area of a month where not much is going on. But I want to go back to the question from the other lady earlier on about the roads, and make a suggestion that when the state significant and state assessment is done, that there's an instrument placed, a generic instrument placed in each approval, that an independent dilapidation survey would be done, and that would be repeated, say, 4 or 5 times a year by someone like ARB, which is the Australian Road Research Board, or a NATA registered lab. And there's heaps of civil engineering consultancies that do dilapidation surveys, and actually put the onus through an independent assessment back on the developers to maintain the local infrastructure. The challenge that Balrenal's got, and I'd be speaking on behalf of other rural and rural remote councils, and even councils that aren't so rural and remote, is that even carrying out that alone, when you've got one engineer looking after an area that's bigger than 63 countries in Balrenal's case, is not doable. Nor would it be economically advantageous for 7 councils to independently go out and do 7 RFQs or 7 RFTs and hire 7 companies to go and do dilapidation surveys. State, in their approval process, could quite easily wrap that up in one instrument, pay and through the development get reimbursed for the cost of the dilapidation surveys, and actually put that onus on the developers instead of the councils carrying the weight of compliance, which has become the de rigueur. That is one way that it could be done. If there's 7 councils that are going to have their local roads affected, and as Brett said, it's not about the state roads, there's 7 areas that are going to be adversely affected with all of these loads. Now, we did some sums here, and in one of the potential new wind farms, which is Kerry, that's still in the developmental stage. It's only a little one. There's 115 turbines. There's over 1,700 loads going to go on local roads just for the components of those turbines, and probably twice that for concrete reinforcement, daily traffic. And I'm an ex-soil analyst, and quite frankly, none of the unsealed roads in our area would take even 10% of those loadings before the material will become friable, which is a technical term for turning to bull dust in the summer, and in the winter, or when there's times of rain, total bog holes. They're not designed for that quantum of high GVM vehicles at all. So I'm not even sure whether the people making the decision to grant these quite understand the level of complexity and difficulty that this is going to cause downstream. As a matter of fact, because of my training in being a soil analyst, I'm 100% convinced that they don't know, because it's a very specialised field. Our roads out here will not cope with that, and we will struggle even managing people to make sure they can comply with fixing our roads, and we'll even struggle with the management of it. Now, when you look at the eastern renewable energy zone with 6,600 loads for the turbines alone, you can double that for the raw materials. 18,000 semi-trailer loads going to an area like Murrumbidgee, the quantum of risk to the local road network is almost unfathomable.
Thank you. That's very useful. Did you want to add anything, Ms. Boliv, about sort of any of the challenges you see?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you for the opportunity. Transport obviously has a major impact on economic development to a region, and so the opportunities that are created by the renewable energies are vast for our region and in the southwest REZ and across the Ramsar Shires. The challenge that we have is the time frame that we've got to maximise those opportunities to be able to create economic development opportunities within the communities in which they're happening. So, for example, the conversation around the transport, if we were able to be better planned in advance, then we could make sure that maximises advantage to our region. And as our previous colleague mentioned in the previous presentation, Ali McLean, the damage that this may do to our existing economic development industries because of the extra pressure that it's putting on our resources without any upfront investment, because the majority of the investment is lagging behind the development. So unlike the other renewable energy zones, we have had the Transgrid interconnector go through our region first. And so we haven't necessarily been able to capitalise on that as best as what we could, because it happened so quickly and it was here before we had the chance to really create the opportunity for our local businesses to upskill and take advantage of some of those opportunities. And if we had have had the forethought, we may have been able to put in place more people that were trained locally to be able to then be skilled up and ready for the next level of work that was to come along in relation to these new renewable energy projects. So we've been fortunate in the Balranald Shire, we've got a civil construction company that was able to take advantage of the Transgrid project and has really stepped their business up from being a small business to employing much more, a much larger workforce. But the challenge then is for them to be able to keep that opportunities happening. And now, because with the South West REZ, the majority of the projects have happened in the eastern end of our region, it's now harder for them to get that flow and work and keep that workforce employed. So just this disjointedness and they're not strategically planning the rollout so that it's keeping those jobs in region is meaning that we're then having subcontractors come into the region to deliver projects that are not leaving the benefit behind from an economic development perspective. The other challenge that we also have is, as a cross-border community, sometimes we don't necessarily understand the implications of what's happening on the other side of the river. And so, for example, a lot of the transport planning, as we sort of discussed with the Ramjo group, as well as the group G3 group that met, spoke first, there's not a designated route designed yet of where the product is going to come from. And if it's going to come through Victoria, where are the conversations happening with the Victorian government around the transport routes? Or if it's coming through South Australia, where's the conversations with them? So we're upgrading the port. They're upgrading the port in South Australia. They've just made that announcement with the investment of the submarines. So how does that impact on this project? Like, where's the cross-border communications and how are we making the most of this to leave ongoing legacy? Because for us, in our part of the region, there was a question earlier around whether the community are supportive of this. A lot of our farmers at this end of the Riverina Murray are very supportive because we are going through very dry conditions here at the moment, and it's providing the opportunity for those farmers in more marginal areas to offset their farming income with other income streams that is reliable regardless of weather conditions. So for us out here, it's really attractive. For other parts of our region, maybe not so much because they've got the livability issues, there's smaller lot sizes, there's more amenity. We already have a power line running through our area, so to upgrade that power line would be fantastic. Even though it's just been upgraded, the previous there was available 3.98 gigawatts of capacity in the interconnector, and that was oversubscribed by 400%. So, like, if we had more power line out here, maybe it creates the opportunity that those communities further to the west may be able to then connect to that, to then create some stability in our economy that takes away the weather pressure. It utilises these existing opportunities. So we're so busy rushing to catch up that we're not thinking perhaps as strategically as what we could about where we should be investing our renewable energy resources across the state. Because there's definitely parts of our region that would welcome this type of development with open arms.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Just go to the issue of cumulative impacts. I know, Mr. Stonestreet, you partially touched on it in your response to Ms. McDonald's questions. Do you think they're being adequately addressed across the multiple concurrent projects as it stands?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe they are. I think the focus is more on chasing down deadlines to have lower emissions targets achieved. And whilst that's obviously the democracy that we live in is quite justified through that process, the reality of it is that the time frame to the finish line is the important thing. Assessing what impacts cumulative-wise will be on communities, for me, as a secondary consideration. as each project comes through the door. Obviously, there is a return on investment imperative for investors. So investors need to have a return on investment. The governments of the nation, of course, and our state need to achieve targets, and those two must meet in some agreed fashion. The impact, in my view, on local communities is not dealt with in a considered way across what might be planned into the future, but it's more dealt with on project-based assessment.
Have any of you actually read the government's version of a cumulative impact study at all? I think they published them in September or November last year. Have any of you read?
I have not, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I read. Mr. Chairman, I read it again this morning. Our councillors have been given a copy of a couple of documents. There's a very, very comprehensive one done by the government, which I perused again this morning. And all it emphasises to me is that we're playing catch up. I'll give you an example with the housing. Our 2 water filtration plants are currently past maximum production. And even with a small increase in housing or even transient workforce accommodation villages, we're going to struggle. And yet, under the new RAF scheme through DCCEEW, we're told now that because the Safe and Secure Water Program is now finalised, that there could be a 2-year process before perhaps, and it's not a sure thing, there'll be a new funding stream available through a community service obligation, which DECW is working on at the moment. That pressure on our water supply is only based on our current pressures, not including the extra pressures from the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone. So we're behind the 8 ball before we even start with water, and I'm sure there's other councils in that regard too. I heard the previous speakers talking about the difficulty of getting water in the east and the irrigation companies being approached. So that's just one example of the cumulative impact. Now, we had a council meeting last night, and we'll be adding the state government's cumulative impact to the integrated water catchment management strategy and making sure that the two align. But at face value, they don't. The IWCM, which has taken over 2 years to do, was actually out of date before it was finished because of the extra impacts of the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone only coming online recently. So that's one example.
Mr. Chairman, could I just pick up on Mr. Dodd's comment about housing in terms of planning for that? The New South Wales government adopted a housing strategy some 4 years ago, predominantly focused on metropolitan areas to support, in particular, local government areas to put infrastructure in place for housing needs. $875 million in committed investment over a 4 or 5 year period. It's only now, in 2026, that there is a regional New South Wales housing strategy being developed at this point. So Mr. Dodds talked about catch-up. So housing for regional New South Wales is one of those areas in catch-up mode.
Mr. Dodds, do you actually think that what the state government produced was a proper cumulative impact study? Because the way I've read them, they just more look like a constraints study or a constraints report, and quite often they present risks to community like waste, like water, as opportunities, which I find highly disingenuous to the community to present risks to those communities as opportunities, but with no actual solutions being offered. I just maybe get a comment on your view as to the quality of the report other than playing catch up.
I like the report for what it was. It did, at least it gave us a vision of what was going on at a high level. It's very difficult when you're looking at an insular level within your boundary and not understanding the freight train coming down the line from the other direction and how fast it's coming. So from that point of view, it was very good. You're right, it doesn't have any solutions, but at least defining what the problem is is the first step you need to do before you address any potential solutions. So I liked it as far as that went. It was enlightening because I learned some things about potential projects that I hadn't even heard of, particularly in the northwest part of our shire, north of Euston. It was very, very enlightening. But on your vein, it was a bit frightening because what it has shown is our complete lack of capacity and momentum to be able to keep up with the wave that's coming through. So we are going to be even under more pressure now, particularly with housing. And
just picking up
housing in our area here housing in our area here is linked to water, and I've already spoken about the pressure we're under with our water filtration.
Yeah, just picking up on one of your comments, then is it a concern to you that you became aware of projects through this cumulative impact study, as a CEO of a local council, that you hadn't heard of before, like that this is the first you're hearing of a project in your council area?
Yes and no. I've only been here 3 months, so I wouldn't expect to know everything that's going on. If I had been here 3 years and not known, I would have been a little bit more circumspect in my answer to you. But having only been here 3 months, I'm on a learning journey about all the things that are happening in Balranald and surrounds, not just the cumulative impacts. So I found it Aladdin's cave of information that might have taken me another 12 months to learn. So it was a bit scary because I didn't realise the quantum, but then again, in reflection, other people might not have expected me to know that after only being here 3 months. I'm still flat out remembering everyone's name. So I hope that's answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's an important clarification. I might pass to Mr. Donnelly.
And listen, thank all the witnesses today. You bring some very detailed evidence which is very specific to those geographic areas you're responsible, and that's very valuable for this inquiry. My question, to Mr. Stonestreet, and thank you for the submission. Could I just, on the submission on page number 2, if I could please take you to that. So this is a page that's got a series of dot points.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Could I please take you to the not one paragraph but 2 paragraphs below that? And it says, and I'll just quote from it, at the same time, while the large-scale renewable energy shift is underway, quite a number of REMJO communities suffer through inadequate energy provision. They have regular brownouts and blackouts, as well as limits to new industries and employment opportunities. It's a very important paragraph. I'm wondering, provide the opportunity to elucidate on that and yes, provide more details if you could, yeah?
Certainly. We have 11 local government areas in our region, of which 2 of those local government areas are in a growth phase. A couple of them are in a stable population position and the remainder are in a decline. So the majority of our members are really not so much looking to manage growth but actually attract growth. In order to attract growth, You need basic utility provision in order to achieve investment. And one of those areas is power. And so this could be a real opportunity for affirmative action in terms of shoring up the future-proofing some of these small communities into the future. If there was direct access allowed to the energy source from those smaller communities that we're talking about here, if you could directly access the power source rather than just being required to link in with the state network as a result of the new spine infrastructure. So it would essentially be place-based advantage for the small regional communities to be able to tap into that energy. Can I just point to a reverse circumstance that's existed in this state for years in terms of the reverse, in terms of location-based advantage, in terms of sewerage infrastructure. Metropolitan Sydney do not treat, by and large, their sewerage to a tertiary treatment level. Hundreds of thousands of megalitres of sewerage treated to primary level only are pumped out into the ocean. Because of that essential cross-subsidy with dealing with that issue, that puts a limit or some sort of a ceiling, suppression, on the costs of development in metropolitan Sydney. It's public knowledge that occurs. By and large, almost all regional utilities are required to secondary treat, if not tertiary treat, their sewage effluent, which adds cost. These costs for metropolitan Sydney should not be hidden. So the reason I cite that as an example is that in the reverse, in the regional small communities, for them to be allowed to tap into the source of energy at generation point will go some way towards assisting them to reverse their decline.
Would you be aware that, I mean, it's a very interesting and I think important point you make. Do you know whether that's being put into the mix for consideration about how some of these communities may be able to have access and reliable access to electricity in the future? Do you know whether that, I mean, there are many issues on the table, so to speak, and always this potential that something is important but perhaps hasn't been brought into sharp relief. Do you know whether this is being sort of ventilated or thought about at the higher level with...
Certainly the issue has been raised before.
Yeah.
Today is not the first occasion that this has occurred. But I think getting some detail behind that and looking at, I suppose, the cost-benefit for the future of regional communities specifically has not been done. Right. But again, I'll point to the real opportunity that is there for those communities, especially those in decline, that could assist them. Yes, there might need to be a cross-subsidy to make that occur, but it future-proofs those communities from an energy perspective. But I think more work needs to be done.
I think it's a very important point. Yeah. Appreciate you putting in your submission. Just on the matter of...
Excuse me, Mr Chairman, can I just add?
Please, yes, please.
Yeah, sorry, can I just add a couple of specific examples in that space. So in Balranald, we've just had a new critical minerals mine established just north of Balranald, 10 kilometres, the Luca mine. And at that mine site, for example, they're having to put in their own solar farm to be able to provide reliable, stable energy supply to be able to meet their need. So that's one example. And we've got another example where we've got an almond farm that have pumps for their irrigation, and they're looking to put in their own solar as well on farm, just because they can't get that reliability of supply through the network, even though the network's running right through the region. So if they were able to get that link into that network, then it would save having to have their own systems being applied on farm or on site.
That's, yeah, thank you. In terms of the statement in, going back to Mr Stonehouse, the paragraph about they can have regular brownouts and blackouts. Are you able to sort of elucidate on that? Is that something which is more particular around certain times of the year, or is it more ad hoc and can happen really with very little notice?
I'd have to take that question on notice.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But happy to provide you with it.
We could provide some comment on that from
Please.
a Balranald
Thank you.
perspective, but not necessarily the rest of the Riverina and Murray Joint organisation. We had a situation the other day. I'm sure you're all aware of the heat wave that came through New South Wales earlier in January. Prior to that, on the 19th of January, we had a storm go through the region, which took out some of our electricity supplies, which as a result of that, we were having, not necessarily in the township itself, but in the outlying areas, we're having brownouts as a result of that reduction in power supply. And when we get temperatures like in the 50 degrees, close to 50 degrees, it makes it very dangerous for some of those communities out in those really remote areas to be without electricity at that point in time, especially when their stock's already doing it difficult. If they can't get access to their pumps won't run to be able to put the water from the bores into the stock troughs and things like that. So, yeah, it is particularly an issue in that hotter time of years where the brownouts happen, but also whenever there's any damage to any power lines. So Essential Energy has been working as fast as they can to fix that infrastructure that went down. But whenever there's any damage to infrastructure, it's really important that it's restored as quickly as possible. So I think it was more than a week that they were out trying to repair the damage that was done through that storm, and then it just happened to coincide with some really hot weather at the same time. So
That's very helpful. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Stonestreet. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, that concludes our time with you this morning. Thank you very much for your time and your efforts on behalf of your communities. There may be some supplementary questions that we may put to you, and I think there was a couple of questions you took on notice, so the Secretariat will be in touch regarding those. But thank you very much for appearing in your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks.
We will now break for 15 minutes and return at 10:45. Welcome our next witnesses. So starting off, Mr. Browning, would you state your full name, position, title, and swear either an oath or affirmation for us, please?
Andrew Malcolm Browning, member of the Bunjil District Landholders Group. What else did you want to know? Sorry.
Just an oath or affirmation.
I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you.
Richard Coughlin, Secretary of the Bunjil District Landholders Group. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Would any of you like to make a short opening statement?
Yes, please. I represent the Bunjil District Landholders Group as Secretary. I am joined by Andrew Browning, who is also a member of the group. We are an incorporated group of farming families neighbouring proposed renewable projects who have been proactive in hosting meetings with EnergyCo, Transgrid, project developers and local council in an attempt to inform these bodies of the vast consequences that we are facing and to get to best outcomes for our community. Tony Marr, Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner, has been present at several of these meetings. Issues we are facing. Number one, the enormous social and economic costs and lack of compensation to near neighbours of renewable energy infrastructure and transmission lines is grossly underestimated by all forms of government and renewable energy developers. The cumulative impacts of multiple developments in our local area amplifies this disruption. Examples are telecommunications connectivity is an ongoing issue since Dinawan substation construction began in 2023. The 463-bed camp has reduced our telecommunications to near zero for the last 3 years. No road maintenance, combined with hugely increased volume of traffic on single-lane raw clay roads, has left our roads in ruin. Security issues, incidents of trespass and damage to properties, insurance and liability, a huge issue for landholders, neighbouring developments which is not being addressed by project developers or government departments or insurance companies. Landholders need legislated protection at claims of damages to renewable infrastructure. Fire control. We rely heavily on fixed-wing air support to contain fast-moving, running grass fires and are extremely concerned that aerial suppression will be compromised with wind turbines. Not to mention social and environmental disruption, mental health, noise, visual disruption, potential decreased land values and negative impacts on biodiversity are all major issues for our community. Point two, energy companies are not only failing to acknowledge the hidden costs, stress and concern about the unknown issues associated with neighbouring their developments, little respect is shown in the negotiation process of individual neighbour agreements by including unacceptable demands. Compensation varies greatly from one project to another, and in one case a large project developer does not see it necessary to offer much in compensation for their project to go ahead. Burden is placed on landholders to navigate these agreements with no support. Landholders are being pressured to sign agreements to then lose any right to object to unforeseen detrimental effects that may occur at a later time. New South Wales planning guidelines are far too one-sided in the developer's favour and in some cases being used by developers to minimise their commitment to a negotiated agreement. Point three, the transmission lines and issuing of access rights in the Southwest REZ lack detailed planning and departmental scrutiny that projects of this size and importance to the national energy transmission would in normal circumstances be required. Example, the granting of planning consent by New South Wales Planning for the Yanco Delta Wind Farm prematurely in December 2023 has resulted in many and extremely consequential modifications to this project through the EPBC. There was no detail in the original EIS of the construction camp, 890 employees, or camp location, no transmission route to access the substation, incomplete surveys and gross understatement of disruption to native grasslands, mirewood lands and groundwater. Statistical change in environmental impact from the original EIS for Yanco Delta Wind Farm to the amendment sought by the developer. Native grasslands original impact was 130 hectares, new impact 418 hectares, a 223% increase in impact. Weeping Mile woodlands original impact 5 hectares, new impact 159 hectares, a 3,000% increase in impact. Superb Parrot original impact 31 hectares, new impact 319 hectares, a 919% increase. Total project impact on native vegetation originally approved by the EPBC was 130 hectares. The new impact is 1,269 hectares, for a total of a 978% increase in environmental impact. Point 4, the coordination of the energy companies to minimise the environmental footprint in our unique landscape has been nothing short of a disgrace. Example, one developer has the Dinawan substation hub landlocked and are not allowing other energy companies access to the substation, resulting in transmission lines along McLennan's Road and the unnecessary removal of protected Weeping Mile. Transmission lines need to be coordinated with all stakeholders. We question the role of Energy Co in coordinating transmission lines to the substation. Point 5. There doesn't appear to be a New South Wales governmental department willing to make energy companies accountable for their actions. Can the Parliamentary Committee explain to us what the role of Energy Co is? Local government is not well enough resourced to manage compliance issues. And under what circumstances would AMIO revoke an energy company's access licence? Point 6, community consultation engagement has been inadequate as town drop-in sessions are not attended by many people in town who have little comprehension of the impacts of the development on close neighbours. We have suggested an open Q&A session with Energy Co and project developers to increase transparency. That's all, Mr Chair.
Thank you. So the committee's resolved just to have free flow questions, so they can come from any of us and also Mr Murphy online. I might start with the government this time around. Mr Donnelly, do you have any questions to start off with?
Perhaps general ones, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming along, and thank you for your submission. In terms of the matters you've raised in your submission, and also expanded on as you've been going through with your evidence, have these matters, either all or in part, gone through any procedure or steps to the councils, or whichever the council or councils are affected, and through that mechanism going to the council, who are very much working very closely on these matters, broadly speaking, given you any satisfaction at all?
Well,
and can I just say the purpose of that, just to be clear, is not to reflect on the councils, but to understand, is there a communication going on?
No, we understand that the New South Wales planning, I'll give you an example of that with the, say, take for instance the roads.
Yes.
Local roads. So from our understanding of communicating with our local council, the Murrumbidgee Council, and with New South Wales planning,
yes,
that prior to construction there was an agreement signed that they were to assess the condition of our roads, and while construction was underway they had no requirement to maintain, upgrade or maintain the road infrastructure. So these are clay dirt tracks, so when you get 500 vehicles and trucks and heavy machinery going up and a bit of rain,
yes,
yeah, they obviously become impassable, and well, local council is not their responsibility because New South Wales Department gave the okay that all they, at the end of the, it's nearly 3-year construction period, they had to return those roads to the original condition. So really, local Murrumbidgee Council have been walking with us on the journey, but they are limited in what they can do, and they don't, well, it shouldn't be local council's responsibility and ratepayers to maintain roads that have been, ruined by developers, I suppose.
So, we had the councils in earlier today, and there's a group of 7 which are working in a very coordinated and appears to be a very effective way, notwithstanding issues that need to be resolved. So that's why I raised the issue about the engagement with the council. In terms of then, as yourselves, as farmers, producers, individuals, you're taking matters up yourself in your own right, or are you doing it through your group here? And the reason I ask both is that are either giving you any joy at all about the matters that you've raised, either as individual or as part of this group?
I'd say we've both individually and as a group, we have raised these concerns. We've met with developers, Energy Co, Transgrid and for no, I would say, inadequate results and inadequate results. No, really nothing,
no particular
limited achievement, deaf ears, I'd say. Yep. And we've met, we've been meeting with these groups for 3 years.
Can I ask, when you most recently your engagement with Energy Co, are you able to give us some detail about when that was? And
the last meeting we had with Energy Co was in relation to, well, the best example I'll give you, it was probably 3 months ago, and there is the issue about landlocking. One developer has effectively landlocked entry or transmission lines for another developer to get back to the substation.
Is that the one you referred to in your opening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so we thought, from our research, Energy Co is the body that is charged with coordinating the developers to minimise impacts on local neighbours and the environment. And so we presented a case where one particular developer had the opportunity to come down a private landholder's land, but the other developer wouldn't come at that.
Play ball.
Yes, and we presented that to Energy Co, and they said yes. We consulted with both developers, and we were unable to get a result.
Right.
So that was quite disappointing, and they just sort of shrugged their shoulders, and they seemed unwilling to utilise their powers for the benefit of our community.
Just briefly, we've heard evidence this morning about the appointment of a renewable energy manager. Can you maybe say what your expectations would be for that position and your hopes?
Can you just repeat that, sorry?
We heard evidence this morning from the councils of the appointment of a renewable energy manager, someone to be one of the key people coordinating these issues across a number of councils. I was wondering if you'd like to comment on those, because a number of the issues you've raised would seem to come under the purview of that person, such as transport, for example, but many, many others. I was wondering if you could comment on what your hopes would be for that position, and please feel free to take it on notice if you wish.
Well, thank you. Would that person have from our layman's perspective, we sort of thought that Energy Co had that power as the umbrella body to pull some of these things into line. Is this new appointment of a similar vein? And will that person have the power and the willingness to execute those powers to get a resolution to some of these issues? And I guess that would be our hope, that we're just sort of screaming out for someone or somebody to try and get some coordination, because we feel all the way along that that's been extremely lacking. Like early days, during the competitive process, the developers couldn't communicate with each other due to, the process.
Competitive, yeah.
That's done now, that all the access has been awarded. We were really hoping that once we reached that point, there'd be a lot more coordination to minimise, as Richard said, the impact to us for all the things that Richard said in his opening statement. And I guess this is the first we've heard of this new appointment. Is it Richard?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I guess we are just really crying out for someone or somebody to come in and just coordinate this stuff a bit to minimise the impact on us that have to live right next to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might just ask a few before passing. Just on when you were talking about, I think, access rights and transparency, you were talking about the planning department essentially favouring developers and developers taking advantage, of loopholes or things that are lacking in the process. Are there any specific examples you can point to where you would say that the developers have taken advantage of, of things that are lacking in the planning process?
Well, that example that I gave you about Yanco Delta Wind Farm, the significant change in the EIS, like if that isn't a significant change, if that isn't called a significant change and it's only called an amendment, then what is it? 3,000% increase in the environmental impact, and that's an amendment. I just think, what do you call a significant change in the environmental impact? And if that's not it, then I think that's pretty poor. But in relation to the planning department, I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but one example of a near neighbour trying to negotiate a neighbourhood agreement, a particular developer was requiring security and to lodge a caveat over part of their property and for them to obtain mortgage consent. It would seem that neighbours are in a really inequitable situation when you're dealing with large corporations and you're not lawyers, haven't got endless funds. Yes, that would be all I'd have to say.
Okay, so just going back to that Yanco Delta example where they clearly did make significant modifications to their project. Would you like to see some greater clarity? Like this committee can make recommendations about what the government should do. Should there be tighter controls on what is a significant modification, and if there is proven to be a significant modification, they have to
resubmit the EIS.
Yeah, resubmit the EIS and almost reset the process with the community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And well, the amendments have not been approved yet. They're still going through that process. But I'd like to know what is significant and what is not significant. Yeah. Because the impacts on our local landscape, we believe, are significant.
And there were so many. I guess there's a lot of amendments because the original EIS was lacking in so much detail, as Richard has explained in his opening statement, with things like camp locations and where the transmission line was going, groundwater use. Like there was just so many important issues lacking from the original EIS that was approved.
So there's probably tighter standards or controls in terms of what is expected in a EIS for these sorts of projects, probably needs to be bolted onto the front end. To avoid this situation that you've had with Yanco.
Yeah, we believe not having a site selected for a camp for 900 people, a camp location and no transmission route to access the substation, we would argue that was incomplete.
Pretty fundamental.
That seemed pretty fundamental to me.
Yes.
Just pick up on your submission, you talked about, access rights for projects in and outside the REZ, and you note that 14% of infrastructure has been granted access rights. 14% sit outside the actual gazetted REZ. What's your what's your view on restricting access rights to projects outside the REZ? Should it be prioritised that they have to sit within the gazetted REZ zone to be given, I guess, priority access?
Definitely, I would, in my opinion, that it should be given priority, and I think the boundary of the REZ was recently moved to accommodate one of the developers. So that's happened. But speaking of the boundaries of the REZ, the substation was originally constructed outside the REZ, not by much, but outside, and we as a group wonder why, too late now I guess, but why that substation wasn't actually constructed in a much more central location so that all the developers from where we are up the eastern end across to here could have more centralised access to it. We found that astonishing.
Yeah, the original positioning of the substation, well, you're effectively with the Colliamberley irrigation to the north, you're blocked out there, and so one particular developer basically surrounds the substation, so it makes access for other developers very difficult.
And probably just one final one from me, just dealing with Energy Co and consultation. We've heard quite regularly that Energy Co just refuses to want to have sort of town hall style meetings where they get questions put to them. Have they refused that option with the community here?
I don't know if they haven't flat out refused, but I suppose they've pushed it.
Yeah. Well, have they offered or had any town hall style meetings, or has it just been those shop fronts with a person sitting in there with a laptop?
Was Energy Co in Jerilderie that time?
Not Energy Co, no, they haven't, no.
We've certainly put that forward to Energy Co and the developers. That's to just show up and give a presentation is one thing, but to show up and all together, by the way, not just one, all together, and take questions from the floor so that we can have some sort of collaborative approach. We've found hard to get traction on that, yes.
Has there been any excuses? Sorry, has there been any reasons or rationale or, shall I say, excuses thrown up as to why that can't happen?
I'd have to...
No, I think from our perception, it's just Energy Co's lack of commitment or lack of willingness, I suppose, to meaningfully engage with developers and utilise, what I believe is the powers that they have or their basic role for existing. They just don't seem to be willing to get involved in that process.
Yeah. Well, the evidence we heard from councils was that they thought Energy Co had stepped up its game in the last 12 months. Have you seen any noticeable step up in their game from obviously a very low point?
Yeah. No, we have not.
Not as yet, no.
Thanks, Chair. Following on from that, and I appreciate there's a bit of time passed from when you wrote the submission and being here, but in the submission I think you were talking about wanting to have a community meeting in Jerilderie to talk about something. I'm assuming that hasn't happened?
To give us a bit more context.
You talked about you wanted a local meeting in Jerilderie with all the stakeholders in a public forum
yes.
for the community to get it. So similar to what the Chair was asking, but that was
that request hasn't been acquiesced to as far as I know.
Okay. And then in terms of just, I guess, your group, how many members roughly do you have? Like, what's the size of the scale of people?
12 local land holders.
Okay. And then do you try as a collective to work together where you can to meet with companies and work out some of the neighbouring agreements?
Yes, we're working as a group.
Yeah.
Not the neighbourhood agreements, they're between individual landholders, but the community benefits stuff.
Yeah, okay. And do you find it sometimes challenging for people to share information based on some of the non-disclosures and things that they're having with companies, or has that not been an issue for you?
Yes, it is challenging at times, but I think our group does a very good job of differentiating between where roles.
Yeah.
Essentially, the role that the group partakes and the sort of confidential nature of the individual neighbour agreements. But we walk that fine line.
Yeah, okay. We've had evidence in other hearings in different parts of the state where people have sort of spoken about effectively wishing that the NDAs didn't exist so that landholders could speak more openly and the community would know exactly what was going on and what was planned. Is that something that comes up?
Yes. Well, I guess I'll speak from my personal experience. We're in this, myself and my partner and our business are directly in this space, and we just flat out sort of said to one of the developers we weren't going to agree to certain NDAs because we thought it was relevant to share with our neighbours. Yeah, it is an issue for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned in your opening statement, and it's in your submission as well, just some of the impacts on telecommunications and connectivity with the substation. Can you just talk to us a little bit more about like what you're seeing, what the impact that's had on your business, how it could have been resolved to not become such an issue in your view?
Yeah, well, there's a tower located on Kidman Way, near central to our properties, and ever since the construction started on the substation, you can't make phone calls, and you're trying to, there's some. We're all trying to run a business, and can't make phone calls, can't get emails, text maybe. You have issues with fires, being able to communicate. Like we had a fire on our property a couple of months ago, and we don't receive notifications on the RFS app, and then when the fire is underway and people are trying to call you to figure out where to go, you cannot have communication. We had an issue with a group of people that cut 6 of our fences and were stealing gear from, I suppose, the Transgrid's construction team, and you got no phone reception to make a call to the police. You have several of our neighbours are quite elderly, and it's put a huge strain on our businesses. For example, if you want to make a phone call and you're out in the paddock, you have to drive 20 minutes back to the landline to make a phone call. If you can think about that in your own line of work, it's extremely frustrating. And we have numerous meetings with Energy Co, the developers, Transgrid, and these issues have been on the table for probably 3 years, and no offer of resolution, or we've spoken to the telecommunications ombudsman, and nothing, no movement there. So that's been, in the current day you can't operate your life and business without proper communication. So it's been extremely frustrating.
Just if I could add to that too, a couple of examples. I'm RFS group captain for the area, and during December it was, just for an example, and we're a farm, we grow crops, we're harvesting in December, and the phones were just pretty much useless. We had a fire. The RFS Active app, I'm in my header trying to get things organised, and RFS Active app wouldn't open. Got in my group vehicle, the mobile data terminal wouldn't work till I got almost to town. I'm harvesting, I can't open the apps on my phone for all the grain receivable sites to check pricing and delivery arrangements and so forth. I think the point I'm trying to make is that the way society is set up these days, phones are no longer a luxury.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know the day that the camp shut down for the Christmas break, because I was out in the paddock, my wife and I were moving some sheep, and all of a sudden our phone started pinging and everything started working. After the Christmas break, the workforce went back at the camp, our phones went to rubbish again. So there's just, you don't need to be rocket scientist to
Yeah.
work out that it's just a massive, massive impact on our amenity and connectivity and running our daily lives.
And that, I mean, obviously those tools and the telecommunication access is vital to you running your businesses and your farming enterprises these days. As you say, it's not a luxury.
And emergency services
Yeah.
these days as well.
Yeah, yeah. Just one last one, if I can, Chair. I've sort of picked up on it with your evidence, but I guess just in terms of the personal impact that it's having on you, having these projects in your area, and I guess on behalf of your members, again, in other areas, we've had landholders talk to us about sort of the uncertainty and not quite sure what's going where, the time frames. In some cases, the mental health impact in the community has been noted as well. Is there sort of anything in that space that you wanted to share with the committee in terms of your experiences?
Yeah, massive. As I said, we're right next to one of the developers. My wife and I, yes, it takes a tremendous toll on our mental health. I suppose the uncertainty as much as anything, but you know, we live where we live. There are advantages that we love, and there are disadvantages that we wear because we choose where we live. And visual amenity and the noise, and I mean, developers all say that. And that's another point. The developers all say that the sound limits are within these limits, or ABC, but the cumulative effect isn't really recognised or measured. So you got one developer, and we were going to have three. One got knocked on the head, so now we've got two. But it doesn't seem to be any appreciation or measurement of the cumulative impact of multiple developers, for example, with us, surrounding us. So. And we have another near neighbour that's in the same boat as us, being surrounded probably even more so. And yeah, she regularly comments on the toll that this is taking through so many ways. The time it takes to handle all this stuff, the mental toll, the visual toll, the amenity, lifestyle, the whole, yeah. And we feel it doesn't get appreciated.
We're hearing it. We're hearing it around the state, if that's any consolation to you. But yeah.
Thank you.
Ms McDonald.
Thank you. I was going to ask a few different questions. And this one probably, in your opinion, do you think landholders were given meaningful ability to negotiate the route alignment? I know it's a bit late now, but...
For the
transmission,
for the proponents, or for the PEC line, or for
the east-west 520. Well, we have 18 towers going through our property. I would say no, but they have the compulsory acquisition powers. So an example I could give you there was a part of the line could have gone through a TSR, stock reserve, and instead of going through our place and crossing the creek, but we were told that no, we don't, or we don't like, or we can't go through stock reserves, and then you drive an hour away and they have gone through stock reserves. So yeah, lack of transparency there, but obviously with the compulsory acquisition it had to go somewhere. So yeah, if you had a choice you wouldn't want it going through, but
no, of course not. Yeah.
And yeah, limit. I would say very limited ability to influence the pathway. Yeah, yep.
And we've mentioned that in your submission you asked or would like to have had a public forum. That hasn't happened yet. What if there was one? What outcomes would you have been looking for at such a forum?
just some more transparency and some more coordination between everybody, whether it's government, developers. Just that's the thing that's frustrated us so much, is that, as I referenced earlier, the commercial in confidence provisions when it was all competitive, that's done now.
Yeah.
It's all been awarded. So why aren't there some heads getting knocked together to just make it as streamlined and as least impactful as possible? That would be the main one. And the other things along telecommunications that we've spoken about, and just some other stuff to try and alleviate the impact on our lifestyle and business.
Do you believe like that would go to, say, consultation in a way, and have sort of like the social licence process been genuine, or do you think it's just sort of been information given out?
Yeah, from our perspective, it definitely, well, from our opinion, it hasn't been met at all, and I don't think it may be written into their communications, but from our experience, I don't think there's any weight at all put on it, and I don't think it affects, from our point of view, it doesn't seem to affect the ability of a developer to do what they want.
Mm-hmm. And so also back on, so you haven't had the public forum, but you've got this now. What would you like to see from Transgrid and Energy Co, if you could sort of have a, maybe not a wish list, but if there was something for the future, or what would you like to see from Transgrid and Energy Co moving forward?
Well, for Energy Co to utilise their powers and, I suppose, execute what their primary objective is, to coordinate these individual projects to minimise the impact on our local community. For example, if you have separate parts of a development and they're all running transmission lines, or multiple companies, they're running transmission lines to get the power back into the substation. Like, it seems pretty simple for Energy Co to get them together and say, hey, we're not having 6 sets of power lines back to the substation. You guys need to coordinate it. I thought it would have been cost effective for the developers to do that and make sense on a lot of counts, but that doesn't seem to be happening, and Energy Co don't seem to be forcing people to the table. That's one thing I would like to see happen.
Yeah, just the coordination.
Coordination and planning. So
you're the overarch. Well, unless we're completely misguided in our interpretation of Energy Co's role, just to exercise your powers and get some coordination between these.
And you mentioned in your opening statement with regard to different projects changing, so do you think the long-term biosecurity management responsibility has been clearly allocated, or because they keep changing?
You mean more the environmental impacts? Well, I just don't see how you can have those increases in environmental impacts from your original EIS. I just don't see how you can make such significant changes and not be open to either resubmitting an EIS or significant scrutiny on that. I think it's a significant departure from the original EIS. And so, no, I don't think they are. I don't think they are living up to. I don't think it meets the pub test personally.
I've just one. Have you seen any measurable benefit to the local community since this REZ started?
Well, my opinion, and Andrew can comment on his thoughts, but my opinion is the only people that will benefit from this are the landholders who choose to have it on their land, and everyone else. I think it'll be a detriment to the community. I think it's created significant unease between neighbours. I think it's created more division in our community. And yes, I personally don't see there'll be. I think it's a net negative on the whole community. I see little example of local employment or engaging of local businesses. I think it's been poorly planned, it's been poorly executed and poorly managed, and we have to live with that for now and for the rest of our lives. So yeah, it's been extremely disappointing in how it's been managed, would be my opinion.
Yeah, well, I suppose council have had a lot of money thrown at them, and I guess they're going to build new doctor's surgery in town and childcare centre up at Darlington Point. So through the VPA process, so look, they're getting a lot of cash initially. But other than that, I would agree with Richard's comments, and it seems to be that those of us that are really wearing the impacts seem to get little appreciation of what the cost to our businesses and lifestyle. Yeah.
Thank you. Just quickly on that, you said you're getting a new doctor's surgery in town. Is there going to be a doctor to go along with that?
All those issues, yeah. And yes.
We do have a doctor at the moment.
Like recruiting and maintaining staff in small country towns is extremely difficult.
Yep.
And for instance, take one of the proposed developments, camps has the ability to host 900 people. We have one doctor and it's a 2-week wait to get in. That's one example.
The pressure on that one doctor is already immense.
So we've presented that to the developers, and they tell you that they've got it under control, but I see no evidence of it.
Well, thank you. I think that pretty much takes us to time. So thank you for your evidence. Thank you for your work on behalf of your community.
Thank you.
We may have some supplementary questions, and we'll flick them to you, and the Secretary will be in touch in terms of getting them back to us. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Evidence very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we now welcome our last witnesses who've been waiting patiently all day. So thank you very much. Just starting with my first witness on my left, can you state your name, position, title, and swear either an oath or affirmation?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Nathan Menser. I'm the Community and Stakeholder Engagement Manager for the V&I West project being delivered by Transgrid. Today I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm the General Manager for Community and Social Licence at Transgrid. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Would either you like to make a short opening statement before we go to questions?
Yes, Chair. Before I do, I just want to commend the Hay Services Club on this, on how well the actual event is and the venue is. It's really well done, and commend them for their efforts to hosting the committee and us today. And I also pay my respects to the Wiradjuri people of this, of the lands we meet as well. Keep our opening remarks short as we appear to the Singleton hearing. However, I'd like to reiterate Transgrid thanks to the people of the regional New South Wales for their fundamental role in our state's transition to renewable energy. We thank them for hosting infrastructure on their properties, working on transmission networks, as well as generators and batteries. and we thank the many regional businesses that support us in our work. We also recognise the impact that our infrastructure has on landholders, their neighbours and communities in regional areas. We have and always will continue to listen to regional communities as they want honest, transparent communication about projects, clear plans and timelines and actions based on community feedback. We are working with local communities who have called for genuine investment that prioritises long-term benefits, delivering local jobs as well as education opportunities for young people and community benefits that will leave a lasting legacy to enable everyone to take advantage of the clean energy transition. We employ more than 2,000 people, with more than a third based in regional New South Wales, including a growing apprenticeship program to meet the challenges that face the renewable transition. Since our last inquiry hearing, I'm able to share that we will soon also be opening a new training and skills centre in Wagga Wagga to train skilled workers in constructing high voltage transmission towers and lines, starting with the nation critical project HumeLink. Noting this inquiry's focus is on the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone, I want to highlight that Transgrid is delivering the critical transmission infrastructure required to connect the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone to New South Wales major load centres. This includes 3 nationally significant projects: Energy Connect, HumeLink and VNI West. These projects will enable renewable energy generators in the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone to reliably export electricity into the grid, supporting New South Wales' clean energy transition and energy security. We thank the committee for your work in this area and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I might start off with a couple. Just in terms of employment, I guess locally, specifically with the substation we came out and saw yesterday, refresh my memory, there was, at peak, there was, 400 and something people in?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. How many of those were local to the region and how many were brought in? Obviously, we know there was some that had to be brought in from overseas because of their technical knowledge of the synchronistic condensers. But how many were local employment?
I'm not too sure on the exact number, Chair, but what we do with our contractors, being the delivery partner contractor or LECNOR for Project Energy Connect, we put strong stipulations in regards to what their local employment numbers are as part of the tender. So I'd have to get back to you on the exact number or percentage of what that is for that work. But you're completely correct in saying that a lot of the technical expertise required to deliver those synchronous condensers and that has been sought from around the country and around the world in that instance. But I'm happy to take that on notice and get back to you.
Yeah, that would be good. Obviously, you were listening to the last witnesses and they were talking about concerns around telecommunications in and around the substation. Have they voiced those concerns to you in the past, and have you been able to ascertain as to what the actual issue was or the cause of that issue was?
Yes, Chair, they have. We've spent many time with the local community groups, being the Bundoora Association landholder group that came in, as well as council. And Energy Co and Telstra in many instances to discuss the impact on the telecommunication network in the region. We've been very much prioritising face-to-face and coordinating those meetings and discussions. We understand that a lot of that imposed impact that is occurring from the increase of population in the area is due to the adequacy of the telecommunication towers that Telstra host in the area. So we've been trying to work with them very closely on what they potentially could to assist in regards to what is the increase of population in that area around the substation. What we've done for Transgrid as part of recognising that impact and trying to reduce that impact with landowners is looking at what we can possibly do within our substation and part of our camp, where we've actually installed a significant amount of Starlink or satellite generators and receivers, not just across our main kind of central locations in those hubs, but also to vehicles in other locations as well, and to our workforce that actually have to travel across the line to reduce the impact and the imposing impact that it has in bringing down the mobile network that's in a fairly poor state around there at the moment. In saying that, we've also understood and listening to community to take that on board as part of any future projects that do come forward, to potentially look at funding opportunities for investment into more of a social legacy in that instance as part of our project, and also leaning in on Energy Co and other developers as well to also consider the voice of the community on that impact to see if they can look at investing similarly to support.
Was there any positive response from Telstra from their end in terms of wanting to put anything in place to upgrade or fix?
It's more of a recognition is what was kind of incurred in that instance. But we knew that the communication was very much that it would take a long time and a significant investment to support that. So Transgrid decided to actually look at what we're imposing on community at the moment and how we can best mitigate that. So that's the approach we've taken.
Okay.
Can I just, following on from that, and I appreciate what you're saying and that it's, multi-layered in that there's a role for Telstra as well, but I guess just hearing from the witnesses before you, and I think they made some pretty good points around the impact on their farming businesses, but also potentially emergency services as well, because no one would want a situation where, the RFS couldn't go and help people if there was a fire. So I suppose learning from what's happened there, and you did say that you want to look to that going, is it a case of just more investment, or how do you solve this if it's a problem that could exist in terms of that impact on the telecommunications? Is there any kind of insights into that?
Yeah, well, I guess in the instance of Transgrid, we can only solve what we can control.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, in that instance, we're very much looking at what mechanisms could we solve in that instance, and so to do that, we've identified that if we invest into having more of an alternative of using Starlink and those things is the way that we can best do it from what we can control.
Yeah.
I can't comment on what Telstra.
Yeah, no. So, but going forward, knowing what you've learned here, you might say, okay, well, we need to up, for instance, the Starlink capacity or capability for people on site, so that then you don't kind of detract from the local access. Is that
correct?
Part of the solution.
Correct, and also to actually to then support the workforce that has to leave those substation locations and actually travel across linear projects as well.
Yeah.
But sharing that knowledge with developers and sharing that knowledge with the other generators in the area has also been a benefit too, so they can understand what they could possibly do to also support as reducing the cumulative impact. So we've been very upfront and forthright in sharing that information and those conversations as well with other developers.
Yeah, okay.
If it's on just following on from that consultation point, I mean, we've heard from a number of local councils and local council groups throughout the state. Can you just talk about, because it would seem to me that they're a principal source of information for you and people you need to coordinate with. How do you actually do that? I mean, what is the process? Is there a line where you can say, this is the first thing that happens, this is what we do, how does that actually occur in relation to your coordination with local councils and your consultation?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can talk about how we've actually really kind of taken our engagement approach with local councils and how we've found it being successful. And I guess Nathan can then share more the specific location areas and the local way we've approached it. But we very much identified that we prioritise face-to-face engagement as part of our practice. We spent a lot of time in community here speaking directly with council to really uncover and identify what are the social impacts in the area and the community impacts that the transition is causing, and then identifying with council what information could we provide as part of our projects that we're delivering, and how can that data be used to better understand our impact, that they're also kind of then can inform them on what the impact of that they're hearing from developers and Energy Co and other kind of cumulative impacts as well. So the process that we've really taken as part of our engagement with councils is making sure that we're consistently in community speaking with them face to face, as well as following up and providing them the appropriate information through those planning engagement kind of milestones, to ensure that they have all the information and data and timeline of when our projects are coming through and what impacts that they'll have with community. On top of that, we're also making sure that we actually allow community to inform us about our engagement approach as well. So when we engage with council, we want to make sure constituents and community are getting the same kind of respect and authority as well. So a lot of our approach to engagement has been, like the national guidelines talks to, about prioritising face-to-face to actually be in community to listen and to provide opportunities for them to have a voice to see where that can influence and support our projects to be delivered. And Nathan, did you want to lean into it?
Thanks, Michael. We've undertaken quite a rigorous engagement program over the last 3.5 to 4 years on the V&I West project. It started early with engagement with councils and regional level stakeholders, where we were wanting to road test the V&I West project while it was still in the regulatory investment for test for transmission phase. And that was a way for us to uncover some of the critical issues that were in the region that we would need to address as part of our project development. There were several face-to-face meetings where we travelled out to the region, gained very, very good insights from knowledgeable people, from councils and from the local region, and that informed how we then moved forward with the commencement of our community engagement, which was July 2023. Over the next 2 years, we undertook a rigorous program to start from a study area where we took V&I West as a concept and then refined that down over a number of engagements to land on our 200-metre corridor that would then progress into the environmental assessment phase. Throughout that time, we also demonstrated to community how we took their feedback on board and how their feedback changed the shape of V&I West before it was in the environmental assessment phase. That resulted in a lot of positive outcomes. We were able to move the line away further from the town of Moolameen, for example. We were also able to accommodate some landowners' wishes around what they would like to see on the alignment, and we took feedback from other stakeholders and councils as well throughout that process. And that resulted in us landing on that 200-metre corridor that we then put forward for the environmental assessment, which went on public exhibition in August of last year. Now we're still continuing those engagements. We now have specific topics that we're working with councils and communities on. Councils we engaged just last week on the subject of roads. We're about to do more community engagement on the overall project as well in the next few weeks. And that's all leading towards an amendment report to support our EIS, which will be tabled mid-year with the Department of Planning.
You mentioned roads. I know I've taken a bit of time, but I'll come back to that when others are finished. But that seems to be a recurring issue that I'd like to talk about.
I just have one more on a slightly different topic. Just the newsletter, Energy Connect, the thing you gave us, the community newsletter that you gave us yesterday. I just was interested where it talks about $300,000 in community grants, and there's a couple of examples. I think there's a preschool and an art show and things. Can you just talk us through a little bit more, sort of how that process works, how many recipients have received funding under that, and who can apply, and how that all flows into the community?
Yeah, sure. So the Community Partnership Program is something the TransGrid initiative started with the beginning of Project Energy Connect, and it's run across our footprint of all our projects in New South Wales. So it's also a project that runs through the communities impacted for HumeLink, as well as V&I West, and Hunter Transmission Project as well in that region. So it's a program where community groups can apply twice per year for grants up to $5,000 that can contribute towards ultra-localised kind of community initiatives. We've really found through the success of this program that it was the ultra-local kind of community groups that were really missing out from a lot of the funding and that needed those substantial grants. It is just one mechanism of actually our investment back into community as part of community investment directly. There's also investment across our community investment benefit program for HumeLink that we also we offer and we do. but it's also our focus as well on what our local and regional spend is directly with projects, as well as our jobs and skills and apprenticeships that we offer that really build that social legacy that we're leaving with communities. So there's been a substantial kind of investment for just that component, but it's one of many pieces that make up that social license fabric that we can leave for communities.
Because it came up in sort of more informal discussions that the committee had yesterday, but sometimes the funding through, VPAs or whatever tend to focus on the bigger centres where a local small group or a hall or whatever might actually need a little bit of money that could go a long way. So that's sort of what that program's designed to do, is what
Correct, yes. And some examples of that have been solar panels and that for local schools, increased coverage and visibility for rural fire services and local brigades with cameras put onto towers to create better visibility for bushfire awareness and bushfire management. But it's those kind of ultra-localised kind of supports around those regions that's been really supportive.
Thank you. Can I just add to that? Are you able to provide perhaps on notice the figures by each LGA for that community benefit fund?
Yes, sure, happy to. I guess just in addition, and probably talking more about our direct spend, I can confirm that across our major projects in local LGAs as part of their local and regional spend, we've spent over $800 million in local communities. And for this region, just as an example, more kind of Balranald, there's an $11 million spend across our direct spend. It doesn't include indirect, which is our spend for our workforce and what they do contribute in regards to accommodation and food and beverage and those reasons, but happy to also provide that extra data on the direct community investment.
And with regard to, say, social licence, you were talking about that before, how does Transgrid measure social licence? Is it surveys, complaints, land access agreements, or a combination of all of those, or none of those?
Yeah, no, it is a little bit. So I guess very much, if you look at the foundations of social licence, engagement is definitely a foundation. So making sure that we're actually we're monitoring community sentiment, we're monitoring complaints, commitments as well. So Transgrid puts a very strong focus on landowner commitments, where we're accountable and transparent in kind of fulfilling those commitments, because being so involved in regional New South Wales, we've found it's often those commitments that are the fabric of what then changes sentiment in community. But it's also a number of other things. So as I was speaking before, it's our investment into the economic growth of local communities we impact. So what is our local and regional spend, not just for Transgrid, but also for our delivery partners and our contractors and subcontractors that follow. It is our apprenticeships, jobs, skills. They're the longer lasting legacies that we can leave as an organisation, and that's the information and data we can help support what comes after Transgrid as well, rather than kind of just providing just a financial investment.
And then just on the sentiment side of things, what do you believe the sentiment in this, say, the Southwest REZ community is?
I guess in reference to our projects, our sentiment is very much very strong, neutral to positive in this instance. And we found that is a testament to our engagement approach. We've had many comments from councils and community members that they really appreciate that Transgrid takes the time to come to community, to spend time with community and speak face to face, rather than just being on the other end of a phone or an email address. We prioritise knowing the landowners that are impacted, because it is the relationships that we have to keep with Transgrid. We're a lot different to just a construction organisation. We actually have to live with community, in community, post-construction. So we found that the sentiment of this region is very much a neutral to positive, and we very much are very accountable and transparent with that on our website through our landowner code of conduct, the information we give landowners about living with transmission lines, and the support we offer them through mental health, as well as how they can really have an influence on the project design, construction into operations.
Oh, just three quick ones. So can you just clarify for us the capacity of the transmission that is being built in the southwest?
So in regards to V&I West and Project Energy Connect, it's a 500 kV transmission line that is connecting with Project Energy Connect. It's connecting South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales as an interconnector. For V&I West, it's very much connecting Victoria into New South Wales in that instance.
And then what would be the capacity of, say, the wind, the solar and the battery projects that you expect to be built around here?
I will have to get back to you in regards to that kind of capacity, but the capacity in those conversations are usually kind of controlled by the Australian Energy Market Operator.
And are you aware of, say, additional projects that will be built sort of close by but not in the REZ?
Again, I'll have to take that one on notice.
Mr. Donnelly?
Thank you, Chancellor. Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for coming along. It's been very helpful evidence. On the matter of understanding the economic impact of such large initiatives in terms of the projects that we're talking about in this part of the state, are you able to provide, and it might be just at a high level, that would be fine, explanation of the economic benefits such as they are in the short term, the medium term and perhaps the longer term, if you're able to do that. Just give us some insights to what Transgrid, who obviously looked at this very closely, along with other companies involved, what are those economic benefits that you apprehend?
Sure. I think what we've really kind of uncovered and identified, and as I've previously mentioned in regards to the foundations of social licence, it's really focusing the energy transition on not just what the investment into community is, but what is really driving the transition. And part of it is a brand new industry coming into regions that haven't experienced that before. So the economic value of these projects and the transition that is coming through is a significant, longer-lasting legacy than an initial financial investment for just community upfront. So in many instances, having foresight to look at the longer kind of benefit you can provide, and we've really gathered this information from the communities that we've been impacting and councils. They don't want Transgrid or any other developer to be the sugar hit that comes into a community and then leaves, where community upskill resources and provisions to find out that there's a significant drop in work or opportunity following that. So we've really been kind of focusing our attention on what can we offer to communities as we kind of come through for our project, but making sure that we're coordinated enough to make sure our tenderers, our delivery partners, our contractors are taking the same approach. So what we tend to do as part of the economic growth that we could offer to the local communities is we inform through our tender process that our contractors have a stipulation in regards to what their local spend will have to be and their investment will have to be into local workforce. Following that, they can then pass that down to their subcontractors as well. So we can start demonstrating and identifying the benefit that it goes from growing, say, a mum and dad business to a small to medium-sized business. But then the role that we actually have in what comes after Transgrid. So if it's a distribution network, if it's a generator as part of the transition, that we're informing community that Transgrid's role and Transgrid's opportunities may have a finite kind of ending with our project. But following that, here is the pipeline of projects that will come afterwards. So then community can be better aware of when they're doing their economic growth kind of proceedings and when they're looking at their planning of community investment and community assets, that they can take into consideration the data that's coming through and the pipeline that's coming through to create more sustainable communities as part of the energy transition, rather than just something that's imposed on them in a short period from each individual project. So in kind of summarising part of those horizons is it's the actual passing down of those stipulations and what we want to be seen as in regards to our role in the transition, but sharing the information for what also comes afterwards to communities is being really effective and kind of understanding that it's a longer term kind of social legacy or economic growth that they can really benefit from in those circumstances.
No, that's very helpful.
Mr. Primrose?
So my final question, because I want to leave my colleagues to also ask them, but this covers the whole range of things. Having been involved in local government for many years, and now on this inquiry, the issue of roads keeps coming up. I mean, all of the equipment, etc., it's not going to be flown in by helicopter. It's going to be on, what amounts to local roads, and particularly the concept of the last mile, when it's no longer on state roads. You may not be the appropriate people to answer this, but who should we be talking to who could actually give us an understanding? And this is for me, and I know my colleagues may be interested as well, about what considerations are being taken and what issues are being will be resolved to actually ensure that the roads, the local roads, are actually able to meet the obligations that will be required, and then will be left in a state when they're no longer required, particularly for moving very heavy equipment. So the local councils can continue into the future to be able to maintain those roads. It just keeps coming up and up and up, and I can't believe we're the only ones pondering it. So someone must have sat down with a slide rule and a computer and, who's a traffic engineer and started to work on these issues. Who should we be talking to? Where do we obtain that information? Because it's a question that keeps coming up endlessly.
I think in the instance of this, and like evidence provided previously before from Council was talking about Transport for New South Wales in regards to those as the road authority. In many instances in these regions, and we've identified this from our engagement with Council, is the road authority for a lot of them has been kind of handed over to Council for the ease of that. Transgrid's been in many kind of conversations around the cumulative road impacts, very much from our early engagement through Energy Connect, but even now more recently with VNI West in that instance. We've been in conversations with the Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner, Tony Marr, in regards to cumulative impacts. We've been sitting with Council and working through that as well. I think Transport for New South Wales would have to be one in regards to the appropriate authority to look at cumulative impacts. What we've been really attempting to do with Council under that instance is, as part of our construction environmental management plans or conditions on our projects, we have to abide by a traffic and transport management plan, which is signed off by Council. In that, it's actually the road maintenance and what happens as part of the impact of the project has to be actually paid for and looked after by our proponents and our delivery partners. So we've been working with Council on making sure that that process is being followed, not just from when we start construction, but during construction as well. So there's a process that we follow with our delivery partners and councils to make sure the roads do get fixed as those impacts happen. So community doesn't have to wait till the end of a project. But Nathan, I might get you to kind of speak more directly in regards to what we've been doing with Council for VNI West.
Sure. Specifically on the roads issue, I did allude a moment ago that we were meeting with councils last week, and that was to initiate a more robust, detailed conversation around the specific impacts on local roads within the LGAs. We were able to obtain data through technical studies, share that information with councils, and also provide them with a draft recommendation on our thoughts on what we could propose as a road treatment or a localised widening or some other treatment in that way. We tabled that. Murrumbidgee Council, Mr. Gary Stoll was here this morning. He informed us of the council policy that they have. We spoke about that policy last week in the meeting, and we're fully aware of council's position. And we've agreed to continue the conversations to better understand what implications there would be for a developer such as Transgrid. We're now in discussion with three councils in the area, being Murrumbidgee, Edward River and Murray River, where we will be sharing our information with them through a number of reports that we'll release in draft form, which will then we'll get response and feedback from them to build up that picture, as Michael was noting, around what goes into our final assessments, which then gets approved by the Department of Planning. So those conversations are ongoing now. We're very much speaking with the officers who are controlling all of, managing all of those processes at the councils, so that we can get a beneficial outcome from a Transgrid perspective, noting that councils are also looking at the cumulative aspect of road management in the LGAs. So we've got an open dialogue with them to work through all of these issues.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've just got one final one, and it's just in whether you could respond to the concerns by the previous witnesses around what they described in terms of the transmission corridors as a bit of a spaghetti junction, and this concerns around developers being locked out, or people being locked out of I guess the corridor, and whether there needs to be a greater coordination of transmission corridors and in what when it comes to these REZs.
Yeah, I guess speaking on that behalf, Energy Co very much are the authority for the renewable energy zones, and then controlling in regards to the connection points that those proponents would actually have as part of into connecting to our projects, which connect in those renewable energy zones. So I guess in reference to that kind of comment, it would definitely be Energy Co that would be coordinating those kind of connections. In reference to kind of our connection outside of the renewable energy zone with our projects being VNI West, in this instance, or Project Energy Connect, we run a very transparent and accountable kind of route selection process, which is heavily influenced by social impacts from community as well as environmental and engineering at the same time. We have evolved that process, and as we kind of previously mentioned, it's much more informed by where community have really kind of called out some of those alternatives, and where we can reduce the amount of transmission lines or visual impacts in those instances to better support an outcome that is accepted by community.
How would you rate NGCO's coordination in the southwest of the REZ, if you had to rate it?
I haven't directly been involved with those kind of coordinations.
From a community engagement perspective, because I've been in discussion with the Energy Co team on that level, I've found that it's been a very good relationship that we have established. There was a sort of a point in time where the engagement increased, and that was after the announcement of the proponents who were granted access under the Energy Co access scheme. I believe that was April last year, and since then certainly the engagement teams at each of the various developers and Energy Co have been meeting on a routine basis to discuss issues as they arise, and to also map out our planned consultation activities with communities. One of the key things that we're all very acutely aware of is consultation fatigue, and not overloading communities with everybody trying to get the same people and talk to them at different times. And certainly the first activity that we did undertake in, I think it was around about May, June 2025, was a coordinated information session series where we came to Hay, Collie, Amberley and Jerilderie, and had all of the developers from the Renewable Energy Zone and Transgrid and Energy Co all in the room together as a sort of a pop-up information session where certainly the gentlemen that were here earlier from the community, from Bunjil, they were also in attendance at that session. And they were well attended, good information sharing. So from that perspective, we're working well together. There's a lot more work to do. We recognise that. And is there any intent to do any more of those group combined sessions between you, the developers, Energy Co? Mr. Chair, at this point, we haven't got anything locked onto a calendar that says that we're all going to do it at this point in time, but we are looking for those opportunities as we move forward, particularly as projects start to become more real on the ground and closer to construction. But we will take that on notice and liaise with EnergyCo and the developers.
Thank you.
I just have, sorry, it hasn't come up so much this visit, but in other areas we've been to, and we might have even spoken about it in the Hunter, but just issues around insurance and liability. Now, obviously we were at the substation yesterday. You know, the landscape's a bit different here than it is in other parts of the state, but like in terms of if there is a fire or an incident out there and there are challenges with that, or it starts on a neighbouring property and it does end up coming there, what happens? Who's liable? Because that's something that's come up quite a bit in other hearings. We sort of haven't touched on it down here today. Is that something that you talk to the community and adjacent landholders about as well?
Definitely from the insurance and liability perspective, like for a landowner that hosts our easements, then it's definitely covered through the conversation and insurance with that landowner as part of the easement acquisition. So the kind of cause on those has definitely been kind of discussed and communicated well with landowners that do host our easements. Mm-hmm. In reference to neighbouring kind of properties and those things, it's more of a conversation that continually comes up with community members, but it's something that's currently being investigated more with the with the government through authorities and through tax and what that looks like.
Just saying, and this is not a reflection on your company, but like, we haven't really been able to get a straight answer anywhere about where, and part of it is more probably the developers and the proponents of the actual projects, not necessarily you guys with the substation and the transmission lines, but sort of definitively who is responsible, who takes that sort of insurance liability and risk on. It's really hard to get to the bottom of that, and I don't know, is that something that government needs to be more across, or what's your view on that?
I can't comment any more than what we can control from Transgrid, but I think it's definitely a government discussion that's currently being had. It's my understanding.
Thank you.
So, there's no other questions. Well,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your time. You did take a few questions on notice, and we may have some supplementary questions, and the committee secretariat will be in touch with you regard to those. Thank you once again.
Thank you, committee.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.